Well, good evening, everyone. I'm glad that y'all have come to the Governor's Faith Forum. I am Eric Eastep. I'm the pastor of Village Church. And so if you're out in the lobby and you would like to come on, we'd like for you to go ahead and come on in. We're going to get started very shortly. But I just wanted to give a welcome, and we're awfully grateful for Faith Winds and for Palmetto family for putting on this event. And so we hope this is going to be a great, informative night for you guys. So I'm just going to lead us in a word of prayer. Then after I do that, I'm going to turn this over to Chad Conley, and then you're going to hear from the people that you came to hear from. So why don't you join with me in prayer? Heavenly Father, we are grateful for this evening that you've given us. And God, we thank you for what you have entrusted us with as citizens of this state, God, as citizens of this country. And God, we are blessed because of what you have provided for us. Lord, I pray that we will be good stewards. And Lord, that as Christians, that we will open our eyes, Lord, and that we will allow our faith to be involved in everything that we do, Lord, including in how we vote and the people that we choose to lead us. And I pray these things in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Y'all give Eric Eastep a big hand for being the host pastor. And also give a big hand to Village Church and all the staff members who are here helping out in the video, IT. Y'all give them a hand as well. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chad Conley with Faith Winds, and I live in the little town of Prosperity just up the road. And my buddy Randy Page and I have been talking about doing this for over a year. And people say, why do you do a faith forum? Let me tell you, because you make up about 70%, self-identified evangelicals make 70% of the voting population in South Carolina. Of the 20 plus debates and forums, you know how many are concentrated and focused on faith? Only one. This one tonight. So thank you for taking your Thursday night to be here, because this matters. I've been all over the country and I talk to pastors, we do pastor meetings. I didn't want to leave my state of South Carolina out, because when I see the problems in society, some of which are caused by bad legislation, amen, do I get an amen out of that? Then I realize there's just not enough Christian going on. There's not too much Christian happening. We don't have enough influence in the public arena, and I decided I'm going to do what I can to fix that. And so we've done over 65 pastor meetings with these candidates and others all over the state of South Carolina since January. We've had over 800 pastors in those meetings to have conversation, real dialogue, and that's what we're going to create tonight with these candidates. And I also want to mention, I'm sure we'll say this a couple times, we've invited 17 candidates to this forum tonight. Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter to us. Jesus ain't running, so we're always voting for the lesser of two evils. I'm in South Carolina, I can always say ain't here, right? I was in Michigan a couple weeks ago, it doesn't go over as well. But anyway, Jesus ain't running, we're always voting for the lesser of two evils. They're human beings, right? So it really doesn't matter about party or person, it matters about principle and policies that line up with a biblical worldview. And that's what we're here to do tonight, is to find out where they stand on issues that you and I care about, of voters of faith and evangelical voters. Of the 17 candidates we invited, only 9 accept their invitation. Y'all take that for what it's worth. My buddy Randy Page and Palmetto family did a voter guide. I think you were given one coming in. Were y'all given one coming in? Y'all should take this back to your churches. And I think my buddy Randy, we have copies. So if you're pastors, I know there are a bunch of pastors here, take it back to church and get your folks informed on where candidates feel about the issues. Some candidates didn't even respond to their survey, and that kind of bothers me, to be honest with you. It's one of the ways that I want to find out where people stand. Just tell me where you stand. Look, I can't get my wife to agree on me on everything. I don't expect the candidates to agree with me everything. I wish they would. And I'm not sure I agree with myself all the time, but tell me where you stand. If I can find out where you stand, we can have a conversation. That's what tonight's all about. It's not a debate, this is a forum. This will be a back and forth on questions that we've been surveying pastors around the state for the last 5 or 6 months. What are the questions that matter to you when it comes to people running for the governor of South Carolina? Doesn't that matter? When it comes to the top cop, the attorney general, when it comes to United States Senate. Now, we knew when we set this is one of those deals. The state Senate got called back in, right? We got state senators on the way here. U.S. senators, congressmen and women that are committed to being here tonight, we can't control their schedules. So we want you to thank every candidate who took time to be here. So please, when they come in, please let them know how much you appreciate them taking time. And if they couldn't make it because of a vote, God bless them, I understand that, but at least they accepted the invitation, and we want you to appreciate that. Y'all welcome my buddy from Palmetto Family Council, Randy Page. We'll get started.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. There we go. And welcome. It's my privilege and honor to introduce our first candidate tonight, Attorney General Alan Wilson. Please join me in welcoming Alan to the stage. Alan, it's great to have you here tonight, and as we've told each of the candidates, you get 2 minutes for an opening statement. So if you would kind of give the crowd a quick 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you. May it please the court.
Yes, you may.
You're the court, by the way. Hey, God bless y'all for being out here tonight. Thank you for giving me this forum and this opportunity to talk to you about my vision for our great state, and I look forward to spending the next 15 minutes talking about some of the things I'd like to do. But first, I'd like to tell you a few impactful stories about me. First, for those of you who don't know, I was adopted when I was 4 years old because my biological father was killed in a military training exercise. So my mother came home, married a guy named Joe Wilson who adopted me. And I remember every single night when I was a little boy, we would get down by my bed and we would pray. And at the end of our prayers, he would look at me and he would say, Alan, there are little boys in this world that don't have a daddy in their life. God loved you so much, he blessed you with 2 daddies that loved you with all their heart. And he would point to the 2 pictures by my bedside table, my dad, my biological dad, and his photo, never letting me forget where I came from. It's because of that type of, the kind of parent that he was and the kind of mother that I had, that my 3 brothers and I all became officers in the military. All of us were Eagle Scouts. All of us served overseas. In fact, serving overseas, I almost lost my life in an IED attack in August 20th of 2004. It was that moment in time where I realized that God had given me a second chance, just like he did all the other soldiers in the convoy I was leading. And for the last 22 years, I've been trying to be worthy of the second chance God gave me that day, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the second chance. When you face your mortality, it really grounds you in your faith. The last thing I want to tell you is about 4 years ago, my wife was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. She ended up going through chemotherapy, having a double mastectomy, numerous reconstructive surgeries. It wrecked her body, and it terrified us. The good news is we were blessed that she is now cancer-free. But what that experience taught me, it was about priorities. Folks, I love being your attorney general. I want to be your governor, but those are just titles. I mean, success, wealth, titles, power, glory, that stuff doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is my relationship with my God through my faith, my relationship with my community. That's what keeps me grounded. That's what's endearing. That is what is enduring. And so I believe I will be your next governor. But even if I'm not, my feet are on the ground and my priorities are right. I'm here tonight because this is a job interview. The office of governor does not belong to anybody. It does not belong to Alan Wilson. I'm here because everyone in this room is my boss. I'm here to ask you to give me the opportunity to hold the office of governor in trust for you because it belongs to you. Allow me to serve you. I look forward to the questions we're going to have tonight, and I look forward to talking to each and every one of you. I will say this, I do have to leave quickly because I have another event in Rock Hill, but I am so grateful that you came out tonight, and I look forward to serving you as your next governor. Thank you, and God bless you.
Well, we appreciate you making both of them work, Alan, and we've known each other a long time. I want to say thank you. You've been more than willing to do pastor meetings around the state. Why don't you share with them a little bit of your faith journey, but how it impacts policy decisions for you?
Absolutely. You mind if I stand? It's the prosecutor in me. I'm standing in front of a judge and a jury. So I gave my life to Christ in the 10th grade. I remember it was Ron Comfort Ministries. Mike Pelletier was an evangelist. He was Ron Comfort's son-in-law, and he came to Grace Christian School, which is over in West Columbia. I was a sophomore, and I remember he walked me through Romans Road and gave my life to Christ. Now, like most 15-year-olds, for the next 10 years, while I was a Christian, I was a believer, and I never stopped believing. You know how they say sometimes people in life stop to smell the roses? Well, I rolled around in a couple of gardens. but I came back home. And obviously, you heard in my opening statement some of the events in my life, later in life, that really grounded me in my faith, but obviously becoming a parent really grounded me. And so I have been a Christian now since I was 15 years old. I am now 52 years old. But that was when I gave my life to Christ, and now I'm on the walk.
In the candidate survey that you completed for Palmetto Family, you indicated that one of your priorities was to codify the Parental Bill of Rights. Why is the issue of parental rights important to you?
Well, first off, the parent-child relationship is sacrosanct. We shouldn't have to have a codified Bill of Rights in our Constitution, but we live in a day and time right now where people say you can have any number of genders, you can mutilate kids, you can inject them in hormones when they're 10 years old, only because they don't feel comfortable in their own skin. You can, in some school districts in this country, you can be punished for not using the right pronoun on someone. It just seems to me that in South Carolina, we shouldn't have to do these things, but if codifying our values into our Constitution recognizes the sanctity of the parent-child relationship, then that is something I am willing to defend, something I would sign, something I would get behind and support. And as Attorney General, I have been involved in dozens of lawsuits to protect the parent-child relationship, and I will continue to do that as a policymaker in the office of governor.
You know, Alan, Randy and I first started working on school choice in this state 24 years ago.
Yeah.
So as governor, and school choice is a big deal. There are homeschoolers here, there are Christian school people here. It matters to them. How will you work with the legislature to expand educational savings accounts and other options for school choice when you're governor?
Well, thank you, Chad. So, folks, in the mid-1980s, my three brothers and I were growing up under the roof of our parents, and they were flourishing in public school. And we had good public schools, but it wasn't working for me. I remember in the 6th grade, my parents had to hold me back. And they sent me to a Christian school, which they really couldn't afford, but they sacrificed to send me there because the class sizes were smaller and I could get more attention. And so I finished my entire educational career all the way up to the 12th grade in a Christian school, while my three brothers all graduated at the top of their class. Each of them were senior presidents of their respective high school classes. And I ended up graduating my Christian school in the top 10. Now, there were 11 people in my class, but I was in the top 10. The point I'm making is, if the educational needs, my educational needs could be that unique and that different with me compared to my three brothers at that time, and we're growing up under the same house with the same parents teaching the same values, why are we going to force feed that across the entire spectrum of all the kids in this state? So that is why I'm a proponent of school choice, maximizing the opportunities for parents to give their children as many options that I did not have and my parents didn't have and that they had to sacrifice. So as your governor, I would obviously always support choice for parents, because it's really, at the end of the day, about what's in the best interests of the child.
Throughout your service as Attorney General, you've defended the issue of life in both state and federal courts. As governor, how would you continue to defend and protect innocent human life?
Well, and Randy, thank you for the question. And ladies and gentlemen, I have always been a staunch defender of the unborn. The rights to life, liberty, and property are all good, but if you don't have life, no other rights matter. And I believe that life has inherent value. It's not value that is assigned by a person like a mother. It's not value that's assigned by a government. If it was, then what Hitler did wasn't all that bad, because if the government can assign life, basically assign value to a human being, it can take that value away from them. So value is inherent in the human, given by nature or nature's God. And that is my foundational belief. And I believe we have a duty to protect those in our society, especially the unborn. And so, as you said, I have been endorsed over the last 4 election cycles by South Carolina Citizens for Life. Every single time I've run for Attorney General, I have defended South Carolina's heartbeat bill, not once, but twice. I have went up to the U.S. Supreme Court on the Dobbs decision, which was the case that overturned Roe v. Wade. I was a friend of the court brief all the way up to the Supreme Court because of my beliefs and my value system on supporting life. As governor, I would carry that same conviction, that same passion to the governor's office, supporting bills and legislation, signing them into law that recognize the inherent value of human life and those who are, basically those who could be hurt most in society if we don't protect them.
You know, I really appreciate, way before you were running, you stood up with us against gambling initiatives. Yeah. And it's a mess, right? And there are like 4 bills that have been filed. It's cluttered, it's confusing. And I don't know about y'all, but all the pastors we've had in meetings, they're like, where do these polls come from that people are for this? They're not polling me. Tell us where you stand on legalization of casino gambling, and how do we fight that in South Carolina? Because you stood with us as pastor meetings around the state already.
Well, in the first governor's debate, I was very clear on this. I oppose it. I oppose legalized casinos in South Carolina. And the reason is look, there are, I've talked to people in other states, and one of the concerns that I have is with that comes an entire industry, or I should say an under industry. You have I've seen drug use, drug trafficking, human trafficking, prostitution. You've seen a lot of other things. And so the revenue that the people that I'm talking to in other states say, Alan, the casino operators are good people, but what comes with those industries creates a lot of problems for law enforcement, for mental health, for drug addiction and drug abuse. And those are things that whatever revenue you save on the front end, you lose on the back end. So as I've traveled the state, I've talked to law enforcement, I've talked to faith leaders on this issue. And as I talk to them, my views on this become more firmly grounded, and that is why I currently oppose them and would do so as governor.
Judicial reform is an idea that's getting a lot of attention here in South Carolina. Do you support the current practice of the legislature in electing judges, or would you like to see it changed so the public can elect judges? Obviously, each system has pros and cons. Or what do you see as the best path forward for the Palmetto State?
Well, I don't think I have enough time on the clock to really answer this one adequately. First off, there's 2 states in the country that elect judges the way we do, us and Virginia, and I'm opposed to the way that we do it. At the end of the day, I believe you need parity of power amongst the 3 branches. Right now, the legislature controls the process for vetting judicial candidates, nominating judicial candidates, and for electing judicial candidates. And then the legislature controls the funding of the entire judicial branch of government. The executive branch of government has de minimis, almost little to no influence in the selection and nomination process of judges. I would support and have supported and fought for 10 years, a system where the nominating process of judges comes up under the governor's office, giving the executive branch a little bit more power relative to the legislature. The legislature, who are your elected representatives, should still be able to do an up or down vote, but if you have judges who are releasing violent criminals or predators back in the community without adequate time, or having civil decisions that are hurting businesses, there's no way to hold them accountable. You can go to your House member or your senator and say you don't like Judge so-and-so because they're hurting your community, but there's 168 other members of the General Assembly you don't get to vote for. There's one governor. If the governor has more control over the nomination of those candidates, then you can go to the governor, which gives you more accountability over that branch of government, and that brings more parity of power. That's as short as I can make it, Chad.
No, that's fantastic, and we got a little bit of time. Soft on crime judges, how do we keep that stuff from coming to South Carolina?
Soft on crime judges? Well, you reform the judicial selection process, giving the governor more influence over the type and quality of judges that are being nominated to the legislative branch of government. You should still be able to go to the legislature and talk to your House member and senator on who they vote up or down for judge. But right now, you don't really have an adequate say in the quality and the type of candidates that are being nominated. So you fix that, and I think you're going to address the problem directly.
That's fantastic, because it's a problem all over the country, the place I travel. So thank you for that. Y'all give him a hand. You have 1 minute to close and seal the deal with them.
It says I have 2 minutes and 38 seconds.
Take 2.5.
Can I have 2.5?
They actually started it late, so.
We started late?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll try to be brief. Ladies and gentlemen, as I started, I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today. I think this is the 3rd time, maybe the 4th time I've been in this church in the last month for various reasons, and it's always great to be here. I want to say this to you. I'm asking everyone in this room, every last one of you, for your vote. To those of you who are already for me, and I see some stickers out there and some winks and nods, thank you. Thank you for your support. It means a lot to me. It's a precious gift. To those of you who remain undecided, I would encourage you to continue to do your due diligence. But what I'm asking, I have 3 weeks from this Tuesday to earn your support. I'm asking you for the opportunity. Just give me the opportunity to earn your vote. And to those of you who are sitting in the audience, you've decided to go another direction. You prefer another candidate. I recognize that. I respect it. I understand it. Don't like it, but I understand it. Okay? This is what I would ask of you. If on June the 10th, your first choice candidate for governor is not in the runoff, but I am, can I be your second choice candidate? That would be my ask of you, because this process matters, right? There will be a 2-week runoff from June 9th to June 23rd. I do not promise you that I will be a perfect governor. I do not promise to you that I won't make mistakes or that I won't say or do something that you disagree with or maybe you think you disagree with. If you're looking for a perfect governor who won't ever let you down or make mistakes, go to another campaign, because I'm not your candidate, because I can't be perfect. I'm not selling you perfection. This is what I'm selling you. I will be a governor who is accountable to you. I will be a governor who is accessible to you. I'm looking out at this room right now, and I see about 20 people that have my cell phone. Give it to your friend if they want to call me. I will be accessible to you. And I will never stop fighting for you as your governor. Give me that chance to be a fighter. Like as a combat veteran, I fought for you. As a prosecutor, I have fought for you. And as your attorney general, I have fought for you. I would like the opportunity to fight as the next governor for the great state of South Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for allowing me to serve as your attorney general. It's been the honor of a lifetime, and I hopefully look forward to serving you as your next governor. God bless you all.
Alan Wilson.
You want to get a quick picture?
Yeah. Selfie. Y'all squeeze in on the side. All right? Okay, get in. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Appreciate you.
So y'all see what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it fun and informational and you really connect to people. This is what we're doing in our pastor meetings. But you also notice we're going to have different candidates. We really tried to accommodate everybody's schedules, and with people voting, the Senate being called in, we have congressmen and congresswomen, senators. It's a little bit confusing. So thank you for your patience, but we're going to go back and forth with different candidates throughout the night. We think you're going to really enjoy the format. Randy Page.
Thank you, Chad. Our next candidate is Greenville businessman and United States Senate candidate Mark Lynch. Please join me in welcoming Mark Lynch to this podium.
What's that mean? Peace? That means peace. 2 minutes. Oh,
2 minutes.
Do you sing or dance?
Neither. I don't want to clear the auditorium.
All right. Okay, so this is my job, filler. So how many of y'all, let's see, I bet there's about 30 or 40 churches represented here. How many of your pastors have been to one of our meetings? Raise your hand if you know your pastor has been to one of our meetings. We've done, I don't know where my son Bennett is. I think we're at 65, where's LaDonna? I think we're at 65 or 68 meetings with a little over 825 pastors of the meetings. I see Edward Earwood. The lights are really bright. He's been at some of those meetings. But we've been able to create dialogue and ask hard questions. And here's what we tell people. This is what I told President Trump's team. This is what I told governor candidates across the country. This is what I've told Senate candidates and even here in South Carolina. It's a private meeting. We're going to handpick who's there. It's a small meeting. There's no media involved. We're going to ask you hard questions, and we're going to pray over you. That's our entire methodology. And we just have back and forth. Do you know we got 2 campaign people in presidential campaigns saved at a little pastor meeting in 2024 cycle? That's kind of cool, isn't it? And we just had pastors creating dialogue and having them in that setting because we don't want just the candidates, we want the staffs to be involved. So y'all are going to see staff members from various campaigns. Get to know them, thank them for coming. If they don't know the Lord, tell them about where your church is and invite them. Be that kind of Christian where they know you're reaching out to make sure they're involved in stuff and they know that you care about stuff going on. I see Dr. Hamlin out there and I see Dr. Estep. That looks good to see you running around too, sir. I appreciate you being here, and I really appreciate Eric for hosting, and I think we're ready. All right, Randy Page.
So we'll try this now. So please join me in welcoming Greenville businessman and United States Senate candidate Mark Lynch to the platform. Well, good evening. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Randy and Chad. It's an honor to be here.
Great to have you. Well, what we would like you to do is, if you could, give us like a 2-minute opening statement, and then we'll work into questions, okay?
Yeah,
Great.
sure.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Mark Lynch, running for United States Senate. I'm from Greenville, successful businessman. I bought my father's business back in 1983 and started running it in 1985. We've grown it 35 times in the last 40 years. It's all about faith. That's what this is about. We have a chapel in our business. We have 2 pastors on staff. The 2 we have now, we lost one Sunday, Dr. Robert Whaley, who used to preach at Northgate Baptist Church and Reedy Fork Baptist Church. He passed away. He's with the Lord. So he was the second pastor after Dr. Carlos Watson. That's the name of our chapel. But God's the owner of our company, and he knows how to run a good company, and he supplies everything we need. And we have an awesome culture at our store. My son is 3rd generation Cole, and my daughter Stevie. He said, "Dad, what is our culture statement?" I said, "You know, we've never had a culture statement, but if we had to write one down right now while I'm alive, what it is we love Jesus Christ, and we're the Navy SEALs of this industry. We're hard fighters, and we work hard, and we've battled all the big box stores, and we've been debt-free since 1999. But I got asked to run for Senate in 2019 for the 2020 race for state Senate because of my knowledge of the national security industry, working with General Mike Flynn, who's endorsed me, and I've worked on the board with John Guandolo, who was the head of the anti-terrorism division of the FBI after 9/11. And we've been training churches and schools and our police and doing that kind of work. And that's how people met me back from 2014 up until 2019 and asked me to run for a state Senate seat. We lost by 5%. Our campaign team got together. We all still wanted to stay in the fight. And so we formed the United Patriots Alliance organization, an activist group to help fight the bad bills in Colombia and keep the people straight that serve us, supposedly, in the State House. And we've done a lot of work. And so this started coming closer to this season again, and a lot of people that have known me have asked me, "When are you running again?" You know, and we asked them, "What would you have us run for?" And the U.S. Senate came up. So we met with a national consultant, and we all agreed. My wife and Sarah of 38 years, we prayed, and we had a washing, and we're in it. Thank you.
Well, Mark, can you describe your faith journey and how it impacts your public policy positions?
Yes. So I was saved at 11. I knew what that meant, and I went down and met with the pastor, Sturts, at First Baptist Church, downtown Greenville, years ago, the original location on McBee, and James Sturts, and gave my life to Christ at 11 years old. And then I was awesome. And later, as a senior in high school and going off to the University of South Carolina, you know, I wasn't letting the Lord be the Lord of my life. He was my Savior. My name was in the book of life, but I started messing around and drinking and smoking cigarettes and doing other drugs and got into trouble. And in 1984, I was in big trouble. I got arrested for a cocaine trafficking charge. And in 1985, on August the 5th, at my father's birthday in the living room, I went over there, and I'm holding a drink. I came home from work that day. I mixed a drink. I hadn't taken a sip of it, and I'm having struggles with what's going on because I totaled a car about 2 weeks ago and broke my sternum bone in half. My fiance I was engaged to marry left me for the second time for good. I was $53,000 in debt at 25 years old in 1985. That's a lot of money even today for me. And I had to come, God brought me to the end of Mark. And I was sitting in my father's den in the living room with like 20 people visiting my dad for his birthday. And God spoke to me and kind of wrote a love letter to me like Jeremiah 29:11, that these are not the plans I have for you. Because I was facing a mandatory prison sentence from my DUI habitual offender offense. Lindsey Graham has put this out there, attacking me on it. 42 years ago, he's bringing up something I dealt with. And I went through a treatment center, got my life back together, came home, started going to meetings every night for over 2.5 years. I met my wife in a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, and we've been helping thousands of men and women for over 40 years come from the lies of addiction into freedom in Christ. 20% of our staff at Jeff Lynch Appliance Center, it's now in our 74th year, have been mentored. We've discipled them and sponsored them, and we hire people coming out of Miracle Hill's Overcomers program for the men and the Renewal program from the women. And so this is a God story. And I came back and made Jesus the Lord of my life, and what a ride it's been. And we've been clean and sober, my wife and I both had, over 40 years. And so I didn't go to prison, obviously, or whatever, and I had a pardon from my felony charge, and it's been a joyous ministry. We planted 2 Celebrate Recovery ministries, one at Brookwood Church, was the first one in 2003. Ike Patterson was the pastor that got about 16 long-term recovery people he knew from working in this industry, and we drove down to Myrtle Beach Community Church and went through a Celebrate Recovery experience with their ministry on Friday night, and went through their class instructions on Saturday all day. And we came back and planted that ministry, and it became one of the biggest ministries in the church. And the pastor that spoke that night said, you know, we're all either in denial or recovery over something. It doesn't have to be drugs. It can be food addiction, shopping, worshiping our children, anything that becomes an idol. And so it's been a good journey, and you know, that's why we have a chapel in our store. Our people are our greatest assets. And like Tim Tebow said one time at a fundraising thing in Spartanburg I saw him at, he said, hey, I have a microphone, but so do all of y'all. And we're commanded to carry the message of Jesus Christ everywhere we go. Because people ask us, well, how do you close on Sunday? How do you have church at the store? You make a decision and you do it, and you honor God through obedience and serve Him. And that's what we do. And today I'm an ordained deacon at our church at Burnsview Baptist Church on Reedville Road. Pastor Tim Huckabee's the pastor. It's over a 100-year-old church, and he's been the pastor there the last 22 years.
Just so y'all keep up, just so y'all can keep up, that we're on a Senate race now, so the questions are a little bit different, although it'll be similar for the people running for the same office.
Let me add one more thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are asking me because they've received these horrible, sickening, lying, trash direct mail pieces attacking me from Lindsey Graham's team. And one of them is Mark Lynch is for legalizing marijuana and cocaine. I've never said that. That's a total lie. I've been working till 2 in the morning, some mornings after 12-step group meetings, mentoring men to get out of that lifestyle. And, you know, I have strong faith. And it's like Celebrate Recovery teaches. It's not once an addict, always an addict. It's once saved, always saved. The escape is Jesus, and that's what replaces drugs.
Well, in the Senate race, one of the contrasts you brought up is on foreign policy, you and Senator Graham, and particularly how it relates to Israel. And I think a lot of people here have been to Israel and care about it. We know the biblical admonition. Describe your foreign policy philosophy and apply that to the current situation between Israel and Iran.
Yeah, this is a very controversial subject. And in our chapel, we've been to Israel with our church, and we have flags of Israel and Jerusalem hanging down that I bought in Israel. You know, my Lord and Savior was the King of the Jews. I love Israel. I love Jews. I work with Chabad of Greenville. with Label Kesselman, and we put the menorah out on the corner there on Woodruff Road and Roper Mountain Road every Hanukkah season, celebrating Jewish celebration. And so, but you know, America, if I become a U.S. Senator, I work for America. I'm employed by y'all. And as a businessman, a successful businessman that's been debt-free since 1999, personally and corporately, I know how to run an ad machine. And when our country's at $39 trillion in debt, and under Lindsay's tutelage, he's grown it $4.2 trillion since he's been the budget head on that committee. That's horrible. We don't have the money. And I've read the book. Nobody's going to wipe Israel off the face of the map. Those are God's chosen people. And, you know, I have a problem. Look, I voted for Trump all 3 times. I love Trump. He's one of the greatest presidents ever that'll go down in history. And I'm glad he's back in. We've helped him get there. The people I hang out with in the national security industry, like General Flynn and Roger Stone and Peter Navarro and all these people that got persecuted from Lindsey Graham's spearheading of the Russian collusion hoax, trying to put President Trump in prison, they led the Clay Clark Reawaken America tour to help Trump get reelected. These guys will do anything, and they're willing to give their life. And Phil Haney, who used to be the director of Homeland Security, lost his life when Obama fired him and purged all his records in Congress of finding all of the Islamic infiltration in D.C. And so, you know, our 2 national security directors, Joe Kent and Tulsi Gabbard, both, I'm just giving you facts. It makes it hard to be in a campaign right now because, you know, if you say anything wrong about Israel, you're an anti-Semite. If you say you're not for the war 100%, you're against Trump. I'm not for either of those. I love Trump. I love Jews. But they both clarified that there was never an imminent threat that they could see. And Joe Kent retired and published that knowledge again, said there's not an imminent threat. So why are we over there? In America, when I'm traveling all over the state as a bankrupt country, we're tired of endless wars. You know, Lindsey hadn't been around, he's been AWOL, and he told everybody, I'm coming back to South Carolina to take your sons and daughters over here to the Middle East to fight. And you know what most of us are saying? No, you're not. We got to work on what's going on in America. I'm America first. And everybody, with the knowledge I have of the deep state and the Islamic threat in America, we have terrorist cells all over the country. One of the first one was in York. We're headed there after this meeting. I got to leave right after this to speak at the Reaganites meeting. I can't stay around and shake hands and meet all you people, my brothers and sisters in Christ out here. But, you know, we have a Holy Islamville is the training camp that's been there for 30 years, and nobody's done anything about it. You know, and I'll just add this. A national security threat is Lindsey. As the head of the budget committee, he's allocated $5.67 billion in the 4th quarter of 25 and the 1st quarter of 26 recently to illegal aliens in this country to pay for their health care, clothing, shelter, money we don't have. But if we're going to print money out of thin air and increase the debt another, whatever that is, over $11 billion, we should give that to our veterans in America, not illegal aliens.
It's been nearly 4 years since the U.S. Supreme Court handed down the Dobbs decision. What role do you believe the federal government can play in advancing pro-life policy?
You're talking on my number 1 subject right now. So I'm endorsed by Equal Protection, South Carolina. Life begins at conception. And I invite everybody to watch the 180 movie by Ray Comfort, where he goes out into the street. He's a Messianic Jew, and he's just interviewing people and asking them their opinions of abortion and all that. And, you know, we're murdering children and calling it healthcare choices. Or we're murdering children and calling it inconvenience. And we've murdered over 64 million. And it doesn't matter. When I read the Bible, And in Psalm 139, God tells us how he chose to create us, even if it happened in a horrible, abusive, physical entanglement in a parking garage in a rape, there's still another life formed. There's the mother and the baby. And if a mother accidentally is killed by a drunk driver or something, it's a double homicide. But it's not if it's a convenience issue or it's not in my plans right now or whatever. So, in our state, I hate to say it, but a lot of us have patted ourselves on the backs when we passed the heartbeat bill. And, with me, you just get raw truth. That's just who I am. I'm going to speak up truth. And when we slide in with the pork in that bill, do-it-yourself abortion pills, we're now murdering more children in the homes with a heartbeat bill that says it's okay to murder a baby up until you can hear a heartbeat. Is it? And it's like Ray Comfort goes up to the people in the streets and he goes up to them and says it's okay to murder another human being. When?
Never.
That's the answer. Good answer. So,
well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you would, please give us a 1-minute closing statement.
1 minute, that's hard.
It is, yes. but they'll help you with it back there.
So, I wear these crosses with a flag on them. Our forefathers, when they started this country and they wrote the Declaration of Independence, they said in the beginning paragraphs, we are endowed by our Creator God with certain God-given unalienable rights. And the first right is the right to life. If we don't protect that, what do we have? And I'm saying that to y'all. And I'm saying that to Faith Wins and all Christians here. How long are we going to allow this playing around every year, same topic, pro-life, and we can't get it done in South Carolina? Because it's okay to murder babies still up until we have a heartbeat, and there's all kind of games played with that. I'm sick of it. That's why I'm running, because I have 4 grandchildren. I'm glad Charlie Kirk wasn't aborted. I'm glad President Trump wasn't aborted. I'm glad I wasn't. I met people at Charlie Kirk's event. We had a big prayer vigil in our parking lot after he died, had over 3,000 people in the parking lot. And the young people are coming out of college today, and it excites me to hear them talk about this topic right here. And we met 2 people in Columbia on Green Street about 6 months before Charlie Kirk was murdered, and they were on this topic. And one of the men came up and said, my mother's attempt to abort me didn't work. I'm here and I have life just like y'all do. And that went through the roof, the topic, the discussion went. So I'm a fighter, I'm an outsider, I'm not one of the good old boys. This is a God first campaign. The only way we can make America great again is to bring God back first again. Our Constitution only works in a moralistic society. And I will fight and make every decision based off of God's word. It's got to get through that first filter, and then it's got to pass through the Constitution second, or it's a no for me. Great. And I'm here to serve you. And I will bring the budget back. I will fight to save senior Social Security.
We're going over time, but we'd like to get a picture with you.
Sure.
And please
thank y'all so much.
Give a round of applause.
For America. Join us. Thank you.
All right, get introduced to the next one. 3rd different candidate, 3rd different office. I actually got to help recruit this guy to run for the 34th district, the Senate district in Georgetown, South Carolina. Y'all welcome up State Senator Stephen Goldfinch. Okay, he's coming. All right. So we designed it this way because we wanted you to hear from as many candidates. With the state Senate being called back in, that was a total surprise to us. We didn't know that that was going to happen. And I know you want to know about redistricting, but I don't think he's going to talk about redistricting here. We're going to keep him on the faith issues. But he just left the state Senate where they're going to be voting on redrawing the districts in South Carolina. How many of y'all been hearing about that in the news? It's everywhere. This guy's got a front row seat. Y'all welcome State Senator Stephen Goldfitch. You have 2 minutes to give an opening statement.
Is it
please,
okay
sir.
if I stand?
Absolutely.
I've been sitting for so long with redistricting, y'all. I'm getting tired of sitting, so if you don't mind, I'm going to stand. But thank you so much for having me, and I'd like to thank Eric for allowing us to use the church. This has been amazing. So please give Eric a round of applause. Thank y'all. A little bit about me. I'm a veteran. I'm the only veteran that's running for Attorney General. I'm a military prosecutor. I've prosecuted some of the worst, including those that would threaten our national security. Also went on to advise a 2-star and a 4-star command on national security law and combat operational law when I was deployed. So I know a little bit about what's worth fighting for, y'all. In America, it's worth fighting for. This is an amazing place, and it really is. Oh, thank you very much. I'm also a conservative lawmaker. I've served in the South Carolina House, and I served in the South Carolina Senate. I'm serving there now. I have worked on projects, drafted bills, and funded things like bond reform, which ended the revolving door of bad guys getting arrested and then put right back out on the street. I helped draft and pass homicide by fentanyl. Fentanyl, y'all, is the scourge of the earth. It's killing our young folks at just a terrible rate. And we had to put an end to the folks that peddle the poison, and we did that in the South Carolina Senate. I'm proud of that. We also put a school resource officer in every single school in South Carolina. That is an amazing accomplishment for South Carolina. Thank you. And finally, I'm an entrepreneur and a businessman. I've actually signed the front of the check rather than just the back of the check. I've opened multiple successful businesses right here in South Carolina, including 2 biotech companies that we partnered with the medical university right out of Charleston. I've had great successes with those. So I would just tell you, Chad, Randy, thank you for having us. Appreciate this, appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself, and I look forward to answer some questions.
Thank you, Stephen. Y'all give him a hand for being here. We really appreciate it. You going the extra mile, coming out of the Senate and being here. I know you're tired of sitting. Tell us about your faith journey and how it impacts your policy decisions.
Sure, yeah. I was raised in a faithful family, but I did not gain my own faith until actually I went to have y'all ever heard of Chrysalis? Anybody in here? Raise your hand if you've heard of Chrysalis. All right, good. All right, it was a Methodist project many, many years ago, still going to this day. But there was a man in my community named Billy Dillard. He was from Conway, South Carolina. He lost his wife to cancer about 10 years ago, 10 years prior to me getting involved in the project. And his project, his faith, and his project for his faith was, shepherding young men through high school. And y'all, it really touched me when I went to Chrysalis and I learned about my faith and earned my own faith, realized that I am a sinner that is damned other than my belief in Jesus Christ. I mean, that's it, right? I mean, and I could give you why, and I could go into, I know we're short on time here, but I could give you why. I had a lot of terrible experiences growing up through high school that put me on that path. But the bottom line is, I'm a sinner just like every single one of you, just like everybody that's out there. And I learned that depravity won't get me anywhere closer to God, that there is no way to bridge that gap other than my faith in Jesus Christ. By the way, I see Jeff sitting right here in the front row, and Jeff has been such a hero for us at the State House, praying for us and working with us on very controversial bills. So I thank you, Jeff, for all that you do for us and praying for us. But Billy Dillard, his whole entire journey and mission was to shepherd us as young kids through high school, through some of those very difficult, trying times. And he had a thing called Billy's Boys. And now we all had this thing that went on our license plate, and we all identified as Billy's Boys. And it was a Christian group, and it gave you a sense of belonging as a teenager when it's very difficult to try to figure out where you are. Now, I'll tell you, many of us drifted away from the faith during that time period, but we always came back to Billy at his house. We met every Wednesday night at his house to talk about faith issues and to talk about the problems that are going on in our life. And today, many of my friends that drifted away from the faith have come back, and have started their own Billy's Boys in Horry County. Now they're serving 300 to 400 kids every single week. So just Billy alone has produced so many faithful servants of Christ in Horry and Georgetown County, and I was proud to be a part of that. So thank you for your question.
Senator, as you know, the legalization of gambling is a subject that the General Assembly has extensively debated this past session. As Attorney General, what type of actions would you take to oppose the expansion of gambling in South Carolina?
Well, I think we have to make sure that we understand that the General Assembly has to first and foremost pass a law to either support gambling in some way, shape, or form in order for that to then be a question for the Attorney General, right? If the Attorney General, if the General Assembly doesn't pass a law, and support is sort of a loose term, but pass a law that gives further approval to the expansion of gambling, if they don't pass that law, then the Attorney General really, at that point in time has the authority to go in and to vigorously and zealously prosecute illegal gambling operations, right? Because it's still illegal at that point in time. If the General Assembly takes the extraordinary step, which I hope they don't, takes the extraordinary step of legalizing gambling, a casino or something along those lines, the Attorney General's hands are tied in many ways of having to protect and defend the law, right? And so I just want to make sure that that distinction is there. Obviously, if there's an illegal gambling operation, the Attorney General needs to be a zealous advocate for South Carolina and shutting that down, because gambling, y'all, scourge of the earth. That is where crime begins. That is where immorality and crime begins. And we have to put a stop to that in all shapes, forms, and fashions, and the expansion of that in all shapes, forms, and fashions. Thank you.
Senator, religious liberty matters to everybody here, pastors, individuals, churches. We've watched what happens when government weaponizes itself against houses of worship. How are you, as Attorney General, how are you going to stand up for religious liberty and stand up for the rights of people sitting in this audience?
Oh gosh, great question. Thank you so much. We saw this during COVID, didn't we? Terrible, terrible. My law practice today is what we call administrative and regulatory law, okay? I sue the government for a living. Y'all, I mean, that's what I do. I sue bureaucrats and the agency state for a living when they make bad and poor decisions which affect South Carolinians, like the shutting down of churches when, somebody else isn't necessarily shut down, right? Y'all, this is really a moral issue at its core, but it's also a legal issue. Whether or not the Attorney General can step in and really make an impact for churches and for faith-based groups, the answer is yes, 100%. The Attorney General needs to step into the gap, needs to put up his hand and say, no more, no more. We're not going to wind up in another situation where COVID shuts down churches and faith-based groups, but keeps the sinful groups open. Y'all, that's just, it's heresy. It's worse than heresy. It is bad news when faith-based groups are particularly oppressed, when the government puts its finger on it and says no more. That's what I do in my law practice today. I sue the agency state and put up our hand and say, no more, Mr. Big Government, no more. And I'm proud of that practice. And I always ask, just as an aside, Chad, I always ask the same question when I put a bureaucrat on the stand. Okay, and it's always this: what is it that gave you the authority to ruin this person's life? And that's a serious question, y'all, and it can apply to the church as well. What is it, Mr. Government, that gave you the authority to shut down this church? The answer almost inevitably is this, y'all: that's the way we've always done it. Y'all, that's the wrong answer. The only right answer that is out there is either statute or regulation, and a lot of the times the regulation's wrong because it doesn't comport with the statute. But that's the answer they give to why did you have the authority to ruin this person's life? That's the wrong answer. That's what I put a stop to. I can give you multiple examples of that. I know I don't have time to do that. I can give you multiple examples of how I've been successful fighting the government on behalf of the citizens of South Carolina in my law practice. But that's what I'll do for Attorney General as well. I will stand up for faith-based groups and churches like this, and I will say no to the big government that tries to shut you down. Thank you.
Throughout his tenure as Attorney General, General Wilson actively led efforts across the nation to protect life, defend religious liberty, and conscience protections. What types of actions would you take if elected as our next Attorney General?
every and all action. I have a 100%, as you know,
Yes.
I have a 100% pro-life record. In the South Carolina House, when I served there from 2012 to 2016, and in the South Carolina Senate from 2016 to today, I have a 100% pro-life record. And I'm proud of that, and I would defend that as Attorney General. South Carolina is a conservative state. We are, y'all. I mean, I know that we have our own little family disagreements sometimes over what's right and, how far should we go in this direction. And those are valid debates, and we should have those debates. Okay, I have no dispute over that. We should have those debates. But at the end of the day, it's the Attorney General's office. It's the Attorney General's duty to stand up for the law of South Carolina. The law of South Carolina is very pro-life. You have to have an Attorney General that knows what he or she's doing, can go to the U.S. Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, and can fight for our state's rights, 10th Amendment, even though it does, in this case, happen to be something as morally important as pro-life issues. That's what I do every single day, y'all, in my law practice. I fight the government on behalf of the citizens of South Carolina. I am the only one, I believe, I don't want to say for sure, I believe I'm the only one that's actually licensed at the Supreme Court. I am the only one that I know of that goes to the Supreme Court and fights on behalf of the citizens of South Carolina against the government. God forbid, I know this is not a partisan group, maybe, but God forbid we wind up with a Gavin Newsom or a Kamala Harris in 2028. Y'all, they're coming after us. They're coming after our faith-based groups. They're coming after our 10th Amendment rights right here in South Carolina. They're coming after our pro-life laws. They're coming after our Second Amendment protections. And we have to have an Attorney General that has been there and done that, and I have, and I think that's a good investment for South Carolina. And I would love to represent you as Attorney General. Thank you.
Senator, a lot of discussion on the issue of judges. In the Palmetto Family Council survey, you said that's not the best way to do it by popular vote.
Yeah.
What's the best way to elect judges in South Carolina? And then how do you lead the legislature as the Attorney General in South Carolina on that issue?
Sure. To begin with, let me just paint a picture of what I believe popular elections look like, okay? If you've ever seen the drug dealer on the corner, that's the perfect guy to get campaign finance from for the judge that he's about to appear in front of. If you've ever seen the white-collar criminal arrested, on the front page, his mugshot for embezzling $1 million from his accounting firm, y'all, that's the perfect guy to get your campaign finance from for the judge that he's going to appear in front of. Now, you may say, that's not going to happen, but you know what? Now you're thinking about it, aren't you? We have to have trust in our institutions. Now, you don't necessarily have to have as much trust in the executive. You don't have to have as much trust in the legislative branch. Like, everybody hates the legislature, right? It's natural, right? I even hate the legislature. I mean, it's just natural, right? It's frustrating. It's difficult. That's the way it works. But you have to have trust in your judiciary. If you don't have trust in your judiciary, that's the seeds of a revolution, y'all. I mean, it really is that important. So to answer your question directly, what's the best way? I think the best way is probably closer to the federal model than where we are now. The federal model, the executive, or, in our case, it would be the governor, right? The governor would nominate judges, and then the Senate would appoint. That's probably the closest thing to the federal model that really makes sense to me, works well. I'm also not a fan of, by the way, direct governor appointment, gubernatorial appointments. I always like to tell people this when they ask about why not just let the governor appoint them. I always say, well, you may not know who you're voting for governor today, but I bet you most of you know who you're not voting for. Right? You got somebody in mind? Everybody in here got somebody in mind you're not going to vote for governor, right? You okay if he or she picks all the judges in South Carolina? The answer is no. Absolutely not. So I think the federal model is probably the best system.
Alliance Defending Freedom gives South Carolina an F when it comes to the issue of parental rights. This year, the House overwhelmingly passed the Parental Rights Act. However, the bill failed to get a hearing in the Senate Education Committee. With you being a parent and possibly our next Attorney General, how important is this issue to you, and what steps would you take to protect parental rights?
Very important to me, y'all. In my Senate capacity, a few years ago, I got very involved in education. I'm not on the education committee, but I got very involved in education because I have a neighbor who's got a kid that has severe dyslexia, dyscalculia. I'm not going to call his name, but he is approximately 3 grade levels behind now in Georgetown County. 3 grade levels behind. What are they going to do with him this year? Are they going to push him forward? Are they going to hold him back again and be 4 grade levels behind? Is he going to be in kindergarten and be 10 years old? Y'all, this is a real problem, and I started getting involved in this a couple years ago. I sat in IEP meetings. Y'all know what IEP meetings are? I know I see a bunch of moms shaking their heads in here because moms know, right? Moms know all about this. IEP meetings are where a kid, it's an individualized educational plan, where a kid with issues, maybe dyslexia, dyscalculia, for instance, has to sit in front of a panel and they evaluate what's right and what they should do and how this education plan can be tailored for this specific kid. And I sat there one day in a meeting, in an IEP. I started going to a lot of IEP meetings. I sat there in a meeting one day, and the parents had been paying approximately $1,500 a month to send their kid to tutoring because the school didn't have a resource teacher that could teach a dyslexic or dyscalculia kid. That's not a free and adequate public education, is it? That's the law, free and adequate public education in South Carolina. That's what they have to provide. But the school wasn't doing that because they didn't have a teacher that could teach a dyslexic kid. So the parents paid $1,500 a month to send their kids to tutoring. And the parents said, would the school consider paying for tutoring? And the IEP administrator said no. And the parents said, would you consider allowing the tutor to come into the school so that we don't have to take 3 hours of our day to come pick up our child and take him to the tutor and take him back to the school and then go back to work? And the IEP administrator said no. And the IEP administrator finally looked at us and she said, I'll tell you what. I see that his grades have been increasing. His test scores have been increasing. If you'll consider taking him out of tutoring for the next year and prove to us that it's the tutor that's improving his grade scores rather than us, we'll consider your requests. Y'all, I was disgusted, and I know Ellen Weaver's disgusted. I can see her shaking her head. Y'all, I was disgusted by that. To suggest that we should harm this little boy because, why? Because they're having some kind of a vested interest in this broken system that she's living in. Y'all, we need parental choice. We need educational choice. We need protections for our kids. And moms, y'all, dads too, but moms especially, you have a right to how your child's educated. An absolute right to how your child is educated. And as Attorney General, if I see a school or a school district that I believe is violating faith, violating the law, not teaching our kids the way they're supposed to, maybe even have books that they're not supposed to, I am going to instruct our opinions division at the Attorney General's office, put a stop to that nonsense immediately. Immediately.
Y'all give Stephen a hand. One of these is working. There we go. Y'all give Stephen a hand. I really, really appreciate you coming from the Senate. I really do. You have a minute to close and make your final pitch.
Thank you so much. Real fast. I like to tell this story because it means a lot to me. And I'll try to do it real fast, Chad. But when I was deployed in North Africa in a combat zone, and I was wounded. It wasn't a combat injury. I wasn't shot or anything. I fell in a bunker, and I hyperextended my shoulder, and I tore my pec and my rotator and my labrum. Nasty injury, but not an emergent injury. So they stuck me on an airfield between Mogadishu and Djibouti called Chibeli. Anybody ever been deployed in Africa? Oh, my man, back in the back. Thank you for your service. Appreciate that. It's hot, y'all, 130 degrees. I got a case of water, some MREs. I'm sitting there. You're going to get picked up by the C-17 soon. A week goes by. Finally, C-17 shows up. I had a lot of time to think about where I was and where I came from. A week goes by. C-17 lands. Nurse, 2 pilots come out. They greet me. They start an IV. And And I got to talking to the pilot. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I got to talking to the pilot, and I said, "Your accent sounds familiar." And he said, "I'm from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina." And they put the IV in me and they took me in the back of the plane, and the last thing I saw about North Africa was the tail fin of that C-17. And it had a Palmetto flag painted on it. It had flown out of Joint Base Charleston to come pick me up. Y'all, South Carolina is an amazing place to live and work. Thank you. It is an amazing place to live and work and raise a family. I mean, it is so amazing. And it is worth fighting for. It is worth fighting a war for. And I have done that. I've been there and done that. And I'm so proud to have served. But it's worth continuing to fight. I still have a debt to pay to America and to South Carolina. This is how I want to pay this debt. I want to serve as your next Attorney General. I think I can do a good job, and I would be honored to have your vote on June 9th. Thank you so much.
Y'all give Stephen Goldfinch a hand.
Thank you very much.
One of the great things about sitting on stage is actually looking out and seeing some friends that show up. And I happen to see my good friend Ellen Weaver, who is our State Superintendent of Education. So I want to welcome her to the stage to speak for a couple of minutes.
Well, good evening, everyone. How are you this evening? I am so overjoyed to be able to be here with you tonight as your State Superintendent of Education. Serving over the last 3.5 years has truly been the privilege and joy and honor of a lifetime. And the Bible tells us that where there is no vision, the people perish. And nowhere is that more important than in the future of our children. I truly believe that there is nothing more precious in God's creation than the hearts and the minds of the children that He has made. And it has been my privilege and my honor to defend their hearts and their minds, to stand up for parental rights as your State Superintendent of Education. And I can't say just what an honor and privilege it is to be able to be in the trenches with folks like Randy and Chad and Steve Pettit and so many of you who I have known for years, people who are out there informing themselves, engaging with their elected officials, and maybe most importantly of all, praying for those of us who are in elected office, who you have chosen to carry the mantle of our shared beliefs into our state government and into our federal government. I just want to tell you briefly about a few things that we have going on, our vision for education here in South Carolina. First, we mentioned defending parental rights. I am proud to tell you that I am currently in court fighting to keep porn out of our kids' school libraries and fighting to keep boys out of girls' bathrooms. We will not compromise on these issues here in South Carolina. I am also so proud to say that we are on the forefront of expanding school choice, universal school choice here in South Carolina. And we still have miles to go, Randy and Chad, but when I think about where we started and where we are now, wow, we are light years ahead in terms of building what I call the education ecosystem of the future, where every parent has a choice to provide an education to their student that meets their unique needs and helps them achieve their full God-given potential. Quickly, reading is the foundation of all other learning. And when I think about the Bible, when I think about the fact that God tells us He created the world with His words, He gave us what the Hebrews call the 10 words or the 10 commandments. He sent us Jesus, who was the Word made flesh, and He's left us with His word, the Bible. Words are the gift that God has given us to understand his world and to think his thoughts after him. And if our children can't read, we have failed them. My number one priority in our public education system has been to bring phonics back to every classroom. And I'm proud to tell you we have trained all of our K-3 teachers in what is now called the science of reading, which back in the old-fashioned days when I was in school was known as phonics. We're taking that same approach of putting tools in teachers' toolboxes for math, because math is the grammar of God's universe. Everything around us contains math. Even the beauty of music and art are based in math. And our children have to have both those literacy and numeracy skills to be successful in life. We also know that our culture has sold children and parents a lie that you have to go into mountains of debt and get a 4-year degree in order to be a success in life. That is simply not true. And that is why we are bringing back high quality career and technical education here in South Carolina, so that whatever path is right for a student, whether that be a 4-year degree, whether that be a 2-year school, a trade school, or maybe it's enlisting in the military like my brother did. Our students are prepared for success. The last thing that I want to say to you tonight is that we are in a pivotal year. Y'all, this is America's 250th birthday, and I want our students to know, I want every student in South Carolina to know what it means not just to be an American, but to be a South Carolinian. Our Palmetto State was the epicenter of American freedom. We would not have the America that we know today were it not for the battles that were fought in the fields, forests, and swamps of South Carolina. We had more revolutionary battles fought here than any other state. And so I invite you to visit palmettocivicsproject.com. Again, that's palmettocivicsproject.com to see the free resources that we are creating to teach children the true history of America. And not only that, to inspire them with stories of bravery and character, the stories and skills that they need to know to not just be successful in school, but to be successful in life. In closing, I love to tell our students who they are as South Carolinians. We have 2 state mottos in our state. The first is, while I breathe, I hope. And I love to tell our students, hope is not a soft, wishful thinking like, I hope I don't have to take that test tomorrow, or I hope I can get some ice cream after school. Hope is a confident expectation that the future can be better than the past or the present. And y'all, as believers, do we not have the ultimate hope of a home in heaven? We have hope to give the world. But we know that hope doesn't just sit around waiting for something to happen. That hope gets out there and rolls up its sleeves. And that's our second state motto, prepared in mind and resources. So I tell our students, you can remember who you are as South Carolinians with one simple phrase: hope propels hard work. And that is what you all carry with you tonight as you leave here and go back into your communities to work hard for the candidates that you want to support, that you believe are going to represent our faith and our values the way that they need to be represented. That's the hope and the hard work that Faith Wins and Palmetto family are bringing to South Carolina and the entire country every single day. And that is the hope and hard work that I commit to you that I will continue to do every single day as your state superintendent of education. Thank you again so much for having me tonight.
Well, our next candidate is someone that I've known since he was in college. And so it's great to have him here tonight. Our state senator, Josh Kimbrell, who's a candidate for governor. Please join me in welcoming Senator Josh Kimbrell.
You didn't have to necessarily say that. That ages both of us for you to tell everybody you've known me since, what has that been, 20 years now?
Something like that, but at least you've still got dark hair.
Look, another couple years in the Senate, I'm going to have no hair. It's especially since we're still there today. I see a few other senators here tonight. Rickenbaugh, you're out there. You know, he had to sit in front of me for a few years. That was fun, right? So it's been a rough day in the Senate because we're down here debating redistricting, and let's just say this is going to be a long couple of days. While y'all are having your Memorial Day, we're going to be sitting in the chamber. So, Mike, I expect you to bring the burgers. Okay.
Very good. Well, if you could you give us kind of an opening statement for about a couple of minutes?
Absolutely. Well, it's good to be with you all. And by the way, what a nice building. I mean, somebody told me this is an 8-week-old church. So Eric Eastup, where's Eric? You know, so yeah, there you go. I knew your dad, you know, back in the day. So I think he was one of the few people who didn't baptize me. I've been baptized 3 times. You were not one of them. The first time I was 12, I wasn't sure it took, so I did it again at 16. That one took. The third time was in Israel, just ceremonially. After a few more years in the Senate, I'll need a 4th one. But look, I grew up, I'm a native South Carolinian. I have 2 immediate relatives buried in my district who fought in the Revolutionary War. It was a great, however many generations you go back, grandfather and uncle, both of whom who fought in the Continental Army. And so I've been in this state since my family's been here since 1746. I deeply am worried about the future of the country, of course, we all are, but we've got to preserve this state. So since I've been involved in politics, Randy mentioned that he's known me since college. I did undergrad at North Greenville University and then grad school twice, once at Gardner-Webb and then Liberty. So I've gone to a few Baptist schools here and there. And for me, it's always been about preserving the nexus between faith and reason, between our culture and our economy. I've said, even I did a 10-year radio program on his radio in the upstate on politics for, you know, from 2010 to 2020 before I came to the Senate. And one thing I always said is you can't have a strong economy without a strong culture, and you can't have a strong culture without a strong economy. So my attitude's always been be a fiscal and social conservative. I've always tried to do that. I beat a 30-year Democrat from Spartanburg. We used to have a Democratic senator from Spartanburg. For 30 years, my district was represented by a Democrat who fought against everything from the heartbeat bill and any pro-life legislation to significant tax cuts, any kind of gun rights. And in 2020, I decided I wanted to unseat him. They weren't totally sure we could do it. I beat him by 11 points in 2020, got reelected by 22 points in 2024, and have been happy to be part of that Senate Republican majority that's actually functional. I mean, prior to 2020, you had a Republican majority in the Senate, but it wasn't functional. I mean, just because of the rules. So most of the stuff that Republicans wanted to advance couldn't be done. We were able to do it. When I came in, 2 other Republicans flipped seats from Democrat to Republican, and we passed heartbeat bill, constitutional carry, the biggest tax cuts in the history of South Carolina. I've been on the front row and the front line of every one of those fights for the past 6 years, and I'm glad to be here with you tonight. So I know you're going to pepper me with questions now.
We have a couple.
I figured.
So the first one is, Josh, can you describe your faith journey and how it impacts your public policy positions?
Absolutely. You know, I remember back in the 2004 campaign, a long time ago, when I first got involved in politics. That one was when Bush was up for re-election, and Howard Dean was the governor of Vermont. Y'all may remember him. He was the screaming guy. And they asked him at a debate what was his favorite book of the New Testament. He said it was Job. Obviously, it's Job, and that's in the Old Testament. So everybody kind of gets religious during political season. For me, the first time I ever spoke in front of a crowd any place, more than 100 people, was when I was 12 years old and I spoke at a church. Our pastor needed somebody to fill in that Sunday. That was me. And so I got started very early in the life of my church. It was inculcated in my value system very early. I used to jog about 3 days a week with my pastor. I was involved in my youth group from about 10 years old all the way through college. I went to undergrad at North Greenville. Now, you talk about a faith journey. That's important to point out because, you know, a lot of people say they're Christians because their mom or their dad was or their grandparents were. That was true for me too, but I went to church because of that. When I got to college, even though I went to a conservative Christian school, I had this moment of like, do I really believe this enough to stake my life on it? So I'm one of the few people who's nerdy enough to tell you, I've read everything from Simon Greenleaf to Cicero to Tertullian and apologetics to understand what I believe and why I believe it. And so for me, it's not just a campaign year slogan. I decided early on in college, I had to be willing to die for my faith if push came to shove. And you don't die for something you don't really believe. So for me, in my sophomore in college was a recommitment of my faith after being completely convinced I could not prove it was not true.
Josh, I want to say how much we appreciate you coming out of the Senate. I know it's been a long day. Y'all getting called back in was one of the curveballs we knew we might face, but thank you. You know, you've been a reliable voice to the Senate for the pro-life cause. How do you continue that as governor?
And look, for starters, we've got to start winning the argument again. It's not just that you win legislative battles, and I appreciate the work you all have done on that. One of the things I will tell everybody here who believes in the pro-life cause, and I would hope that you all do, I've cared about this since I was in high school. And right now we have, I hate to use the term because it feels like we have a lot of this going on in the country, a kind of a civil war within the pro-life movement, if you've noticed, to where some folks say the perfect is the enemy of the good. In my view, you've got to advance the ball down the field and win hearts and minds while you do it. I'll give an example. Have you all seen the movie Amazing Grace about William Wilberforce? Anybody seen that movie? One of my favorites. I think I've watched it 12 times. And Wilberforce was motivated to abolish the slave trade in the British Empire because of, in no small part, his faith, that he thought it was wrong and evil for anybody to be subjugated because of the color of their skin. I saw a button when I was in high school. I've never forgotten the slogan. It said, "Those who supported slavery were free, and those who support abortion were born." That's how oppression works. We have heard the expression before, they're not really people anyway, right? We have to win the argument. Now, the way you win the argument is to convince somebody that a life in the womb is more than a clump of cells or more than something that should be sacrificed on the altar of convenience. That being said, and I know this is controversial for some folks, I don't think the way to win that argument is to put a woman in the electric chair. I don't think you win the pro-life movement by saying we're going to execute people. We've got to win their hearts and minds. So this year I worked, obviously I wanted the Miss-a-Pristine bill passed to try to ban the abortion-inducing drugs. I've worked really hard to make sure the heartbeat bill came into place. When I came to the Senate, South Carolina was at 20 weeks. When I got elected, one of the first bills I co-sponsored and we passed in my first year in office was the heartbeat bill. And even after Dobbs struck it down at the federal level, the state Supreme Court, after they struck down Roe, we thought we'd be okay. The state Supreme Court, under a pretty liberal Chief Justice at that time, Don Beatty, struck it down. And so we had to go fix it again, and I was on the front line of that to make sure we fixed the heartbeat bill, because in the summer of 2022, we got back to 20 weeks in this state. We had people being bused into South Carolina from Florida and Georgia and even North Carolina to have abortions. And I thought that was unconscionable and wrong. So we had a special session that year too. It seems like special sessions are becoming a thing. And we adopted a revised heartbeat bill and dropped the abortions in South Carolina from 20 weeks to 6 weeks and cut the rate by 80%, and have worked really hard since then to defund Planned Parenthood in the DHHS budget. So for me, it's a matter of personal faith and conviction. I'll continue to fight for that.
Great. Thank you. Some members of the General Assembly have indicated their desire to move forward on legalizing medicinal marijuana. If elected governor, would you sign a bill that legalized medicinal or recreational marijuana?
Well, let me start with the second part first. There's no way I'm going to support recreational marijuana in this state. I've always opposed that. We've had multiple debates. I think the first 3 years I was there, we had a discussion about medical. And one of the things I told Senator Davis from Beaufort is the only way we would allow the debate to move forward is to at least put it in a pharmacy. But at the same time, I'm concerned that we don't want to open up a gateway for this. I do not want South Carolina to be a state where you can walk down the street and burn leaf. Every time I go to Washington, D.C., it smells like pot, which probably explains a lot of the decisions that's made on Capitol Hill. I would rather never become a state that legalizes marijuana. I'll go ahead and tell you, I could do it in Clinton voice if you want me to. I've never smoked marijuana, but if I did, I would not inhale. I've never smoked marijuana, not planning on it, and I certainly don't want South Carolina to be a marijuana destination state. We got to crack down on this, even in tourist towns.
I didn't know you did Clinton. Anyway.
That's going to make it on YouTube tonight.
Yeah. This year, there's 4 bills about legalizing gambling, Josh, and law enforcement's worked hard against it. I know Randy and I, many pastors who are here, we've worked really hard against it just to defeat a bill that would legalize casinos. In one of the recent debates, you indicated your willingness to allow casinos in South Carolina. Can you expand on that, why you think that's a good idea for the state?
Well, I didn't say casinos, plural. I said I would be willing to listen to a discussion on the Orangeburg resort property only, but I'm not even sure where that's going to land. I did vote against, we had a bill, many of y'all, how many of you are native South Carolinians? You can raise your hands to that. Y'all remember when video poker was a thing, right? I grew up in Campobello, Inman area, and there was about a mile from where my mom and dad's place is still, was State Line video poker place, and it looked like a mini Vegas. And of course, when that got shut down, I thought that was a good thing. We had a debate in Judiciary earlier this year where they brought forward a bill that was, I can never remember this stuff, I don't even play video games, but Den of Dragons or something, where it was Dragon's Den or whatever, to where the idea was it was a game of skill, and there was a wording in the bill in the Senate Judiciary Committee that we were concerned, a lot of us were concerned, would open up the door to allow a form of video poker again in South Carolina. I think they were going to probably replace the poker machine with the dragon or whatever it was, but I voted against that. That didn't make it through, and none of the bills you've referenced have even gotten a debate on the floor this year, and I don't think they certainly won't now, and I don't anticipate those will be resurrected next year.
School choice has been an issue that's obviously been debated in South Carolina for decades. How would you work with the General Assembly to expand education savings accounts and other school choice options here in the Palmetto State?
Well, Randy, this is kind of personal for you and I, isn't it? Because I think that was one of the first major issues I knew you worked on with school choice. Look, I was for school choice before it was cool. I think there's a country song, I was country before country is cool. I've always believed in school choice. I support universal school choice from K through 12 for every single student, regardless of their income or regardless of their family circumstances. Because God makes every child different. Every kid learns differently. Anybody in here who's a parent, I'm a parent, you know that every kid's gonna have unique learning abilities. They're not gonna learn the same way. So you've gotta have a tailored program for each one of them. At the same time, I believe in terms of our faith and values, if you have school choice, it makes it a lot harder for a government-run system. And I saw Superintendent Weaver up here. I really appreciate Ellen, and I've known her for years. She's done a great job. But we've had others who are pretty on the left-hand side of the equation who've been superintendent of education in this state for a long time. For example, we're one of the few states that, up until recently, I think we're making some progress away from it, taught evolution as a fact, not just a theory. My attitude's always been, I don't believe in evolution as the explanation for human life. I believe that God created us, and I believe He created us in a literal week. That being said, if you want to teach a child about evolution, fine, but you better teach creationism alongside of it and make sure there's a free market of ideas. And the best way to ensure that happens is universal school choice. I think the money should follow the child wherever that boy or girl goes. I think you pay taxes. We're all paying into the system through property taxes, state income taxes, you got federal matching funds. Every dollar for every child should go wherever that child goes, public, private, or anywhere else, without any government strings attached, where you as a mom or dad get to determine what your child is being taught, and the government is not controlling the curriculum.
Josh, obviously another big issue is judicial reform and how we handle that. It's a big discussion right now. Do you support the current practice of the legislature electing judges? Do you think there's a better path forward? What's the best one? There's pros and cons to all of them. How do we do that moving forward in South Carolina?
Well, I think the current practice is a travesty, and I've been open about that from the beginning. I don't like the way we appoint judges. There's only 2 states in the United States that the legislature both nominates and confirms judges. That's us and Virginia. I used to like that we were kind of close to Virginia. Ever since Abigail Spanberger, I like to forget we have any contact with Virginia. But the reality is we're one of 2 states that does that. So you have a few lawyers who are also legislators who get to pick judges before whom they go. And that has not always resulted in the best choice. And backroom deals get made. I'll go back to a few moments ago. I mentioned the decision in the heartbeat bill from 2022. The Chief Justice at that time was Don Beatty. Now, I know Justice Beatty as a person. He's from Spartanburg. As a guy, I like him. He's a nice person. But he kind of makes Sonia Sotomayor look like Clarence Thomas. Okay, I mean, he's hard to the left. It's kind of hard to imagine in South Carolina we had a Chief Justice that was that liberal. The reason that happened is because of the current process. So I've supported having a governor nominate a judge, the Senate confirming that individual kind of on the federal model, but also maintaining the term limits we have now. I don't love the idea of anybody serving for life. I think the Constitution of the United States says a period of good behavior. I can look at a lot of these federal judges and say they're not behaving all that well. So I like in South Carolina, we have term limits to it. There's an age out provision that you have to run to get reelected, so I'll support keeping that. But I think we should have a governor make a nomination, the Senate confirm that individual, and we can still replace them. I think that's the best safeguard for our liberties.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I see that my good friends in the place back in the back have given us a 1-minute countdown. So you have 1 minute for your closing statement.
All right. Well, look, for me, win, lose, or draw in any campaign, your faith is not something that should be politicized. That's something that governs your life, governs your behavior. I've never wavered from that ever since I was young enough to remember. I believe that there is one God. I believe in Jesus Christ being the incarnate Son of God. And I believe it's important to the maintenance of freedom in this country, that we have the freedom to talk about him openly and freely in every setting. You should never be in a position to where you have to choose between your principles and a paycheck, where you have to check your conscience or values at the door. And I believe that this country is successful because we believe in a power greater than government. This country is successful this 250th anniversary we will celebrate on the 4th of July, is because we believe our rights come not from God, but or not from the government, but from God. I mean, Kennedy even said that. Our rights come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. If we forget that, I think we can forget freedom, because you won't be able to maintain freedom if we abandon God. At the same time, I'll say this, become more controversial lately to say this. I'm surprised in South Carolina. But as a Christian, I also believe the United States of America broadly and South Carolina specifically should continue to stand with allies in the world who believe in those values, including Israel. I think we have a rising tide of anti-Semitism that's largely driven, in my view, by a spiritual force beyond just the political moment. And we must continue to stand up for faith and freedom and our belief in the one true God in this country and around the world. And I would fight for that every day as governor. I fought for it every day as senator. And I'll continue to stand for that for the rest of my life.
Y'all give Josh a hand. Get a picture here.
Good to see you guys. Thank you.
Y'all need to give Josh a hand. He left the Senate as well. Randy and I have been catching and hitting curveballs, and I've been really trying to, with changes and whatnot. But I also want to recognize when I see a state senator come in, I want to have my friend Mike Rickenbach come up here and share with you our state senator from Florence. He is running for lieutenant governor. He's not on the ballot, but I've been trying to notice who comes in the room. And when an elected official leaves sitting somewhere for 6 or 8 or 10 hours, I want to let them talk to you. Mike Rickenbach.
It is a pleasure to be with you. But if anybody who does know me, you know that you get one senator from Florence County, you get the other. Sharice Rickenbaugh, stand up. That is my bride and my queen, my best friend and my partner. She's my partner in our dealerships together. We own dealerships in Florence and Hilton Head, but she's also my chief advisor in the Senate. She's in there every day with me. We got another senator there, Matt Labor. Good to see you, my friend. But I just want to take a few minutes and say thank you. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Faith Wins. Thank you, Palmetto family. The reason I really am here is my capacity in the Senate. I serve on what's called the Joint Committee on Children. And by the way, from Florence County, many of you would like to think, we have Francis Marion there and several other things. But who has been to our Buc-ee's in Florence? Can show our hands. That's right. I don't want to brag, but we got the only Buc-ee's in South Carolina. Chopped brisket, sliced brisket, jerky, 37 types of jerky, and 124 gas pumps. So take that the rest of the state. But anyway, so I chair the Joint Committee on Children, and in that capacity as chairman, what we do is we take up legislation that involves families, DSS, DJJ, Children's Advocacy. They come before our committee, and it's an honor and a pleasure, but it's also very daunting work because we have to make the types of tough decisions, such as when does DSS work toward reunification and when do they pivot toward termination of parental rights? Because little known secret, it is pretty easy to make children. But doesn't mean that you're qualified to then raise children. And there is a point, Alexa Newman, I just saw you right there. Hello, good friend. But there is a point where DSS has to make that pivot. There's a lot of good caseworkers who do that. That's one example of what we as legislators have to do. And we're forced with trying to choose how public policy moves forward families and protects children and creates those guardrails. What I'm here to do is really ask a question of you, and that is for you to do your role that I think we're all called to do, which is raise our families, be good stewards, do life, but also remember we've got a moral imperative to pray and to work, because there is a spiritual battle going on. And, I was asked the other day about who in the Bible do I identify with? And a lot of answers would be such as like Paul or David or Moses or Daniel. There's so many great answers. I'm not flashy. I'm not a big voice like that. For me, and it's always been the case, I identify with Nehemiah. I'm a worker bee. I'm okay being a cupbearer and being called. And Sharice and I, we've done life for 3 decades, but when the time came to be called to go into the Senate and then to serve on the Joint Committee on Children and then to become chairman of that, I realized that when I read Nehemiah and I realized that, he put a plowshare in one hand, but he had a sword in the other, and those around him. He knew he needed to work and do life, but he also needed to battle. And for us, that battle is often spiritual. The decisions we make on what does the transgender policy look like when there's a question that we had to take up. For example, what happens if a parent says, I won't recognize the transitioning of my child? Do the courts have the ability to say that's child abuse? Those are the types of tough decisions that we've got to make, and it's got to be with the mindset of families first. And I'm going to close with a very brief story why family matters and why you praying matters. And even if you don't see the manifestation of that prayer, it still matters. In 1971, there's a 14-year-old girl. She gets pregnant by her 15-year-old boyfriend. She's pregnant with me at the time. She goes and tells her boyfriend. Her boyfriend says, I want no part of that, so he leaves. She goes home and tells her mom, Mom, I got pregnant. Mom says, well, here are your 3 choices. You can abort that baby. That's your cleanest option. You can birth that baby and put the baby in foster care. You can birth that baby and keep the baby. But if you keep the baby, you can't come home. She's 14. She's scared to death. I know her story because I'm here. She gave me that chance, but she found me when I was 18. And she said, I was scared to death. I had nobody to rely on. But something inside of me would not let me abort you. Don't know how, don't know why, but I couldn't abort you. So she puts me in foster care. I bounce around foster care. I'm eventually in a foster family where my foster mom's sister comes to see the new baby. My last name is Rickenbaugh, but we don't pronounce it Rickenbaugh. Anybody know how to pronounce it? Reichenbach. I am Mike Reichenbach. So knowing there's exactly 2 black Germans in the world, myself and now my wife, my family, Ed and Shirley, my mom and dad, they were black or they were white Swiss Germans. But they felt compelled to adopt me and to teach me that my story in life was not going to be determined by my start or by my origin story. It would be because of God loves me. And his providential plans and his sovereignty will never be unwound. Doesn't matter the decisions we make. And they adopted me and they taught me to rely on God. Here's why I tell you that story, and here's why I close. Pray. Don't forsake the importance of prayer. It could be prayers that you'll never see the manifestation of it. I know somebody prayed to a 14-year-old girl to give me a chance when she had no good reason to. People prayed, I believe it was people I'll never know prayed, Lord, help young children be adopted, and mom and dad adopted me. Do not forget the power of prayer because it matters. And the last thing I'll leave you is when Nehemiah knew the walls of Jerusalem were torn down, what did he do? 2 things. He prayed and he fasted. Do not forget that there is a biblical imperative that says some things happen with prayer and fasting. And by doing that, we can see a much better South Carolina. Thank you all.
Well, as Chad mentioned at the beginning, there are often some things that change a lot while you're sitting on a platform, and so you have to make some changes. So I'm going to recite the 11th Beatitude, blessed are the flexible. And so we're having to flex a little bit. And, one of the things about the candidates who committed, and I'm thankful for those who committed, is that they also have other jobs. And unfortunately, we got a call late this morning and then mid-afternoon that there is a vote in the United States House of Representatives tonight that they desperately needed Congresswoman Mace and Congressman Norman to stay and vote in that particular vote that's taking place tonight. So they both graciously sent videos to play because they really wanted to be here. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask that let's go ahead and play Congresswoman Mace's video first, and then we'll follow that up with Congressman Norman's video.
Hey everyone, sorry I could not make it tonight. I just landed in DC. We have a big vote this afternoon and this evening, and so I sincerely apologize, but I love the event and talking about how our faith impacts our journey. In 2019, I found myself in a church for the first time in a really long time. It was Saturday night service, and the pastor was preaching on Jeremiah 6:16 about being at a crossroads in life. And if you all are familiar with Jeremiah 6:16, it's about looking for the right path and then walking in it. And I remember sitting there, I had my kids with me in church, and my son, he was 12 at the time, and he wrapped his little arms around me, and he saw me crying, and he said, "Mommy, I love you." And he said, "It's gonna be okay." And he said, "We're gonna be okay." I had some tough decisions in life to make at that time. And 2 years later, inside that same church, I watched my children get baptized. Several weeks ago, as many of you know, I lost my father, retired Brigadier General, Army Brigadier General James Emery Mace. And it was not expected. He got sick and he passed away very quickly. I'm glad he didn't suffer for more than 11 days. But in those very hard and miraculous 11 days, my faith was renewed. The Friday before he passed away, I was sitting with my father and General Reynolds, a Marine Corps vet. We all held hands and we watched my father accept Christ as his Savior 5 days before he passed away. That Monday, I called our pastor into the home, Chaplain Dave Golden, and I held my daddy's hand as the chaplain prayed over my father. I watched the miracle of Christ in his life, and about an hour before he passed away, I was reading my father testimony of veterans who served with him in Vietnam, and he died knowing he was a war hero, and he died knowing that Jesus Christ loved him. It's just a solemn and solid reminder of what's at stake. That if we don't follow God's path, if we don't believe in Jesus Christ, we will lose ourselves, we will lose our state, and we will lose our country. And so I feel the gravity of that responsibility after my father has passed away and I've laid him to rest. That responsibility that I have in my life is greater than it's ever been. And I just wanted to share that with you because it's been such a meaningful thing for me and my family and renewed our faith entirely. Thank you. I wish I could be there, and God bless you.
Hello, I'm Ralph Norman from Rock Hill, South Carolina. Sorry I couldn't be with you tonight. I'm in Washington, D.C. as a member of Congress having to vote on some very important issues due to our slim Republican majority. Let me tell you a little bit about myself, my faith journey, and the goals and aspirations that I have as your next governor. 4 children, I've got 17 grandchildren, been married 51 years, and am proud of the fact that we've got a great family. I come from a home, a Christian home, where I was fortunate enough to have parents who not only exhibited Christianity, they lived it out in every way. And I wish every family could have the home life that I was so fortunate to have. I am running for governor. I will tell you I'm different than the other candidates. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a career politician. I've been in the real estate business for over 40 years. What are my priorities when I'm elected governor? One, we're going to fix our roads and bridges that are falling down. That's infrastructure that's been dilapidated for too long. Secondly, we're going to change the way we elect our judges. To have lawyers who pick judges that they appear before is just not right. Thirdly, we're going to have term limits. I think the elected officials should serve a certain amount of time and then go home and live under some of these laws. I believe our education system, the dollar should follow the child, and we should promote teachers who promote reading, writing, and arithmetic, and those it's things that will allow them to succeed in life. On issues facing this state, I'm against the gambling casino that I understand was only 5 votes short. We have other critical things that are holding South Carolina back. The electricity rates that you're paying are through the roof. The insurance premiums that you're paying are through the roof. The fact that we have a critical situation with the lawsuits that are happening all over the state. We've got to put a loser pay systems in, and I firmly believe every business would welcome this because it's really gotten out of hand. All that to say is the number of people moving to this state is going to engulf South Carolina unless we have orderly growth. And I will put a stop to frivolous companies that just come in here and say they're going to create jobs. They're going to have to do more than that. And if they don't promote the values of South Carolina, which are faith, family, and freedom, then I don't think they have a place in this state because we got to protect it. And but thank you for each one of you. I look forward to meeting y'all in the future. And God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
I've said this more than 10 times, I hope. But y'all need to really appreciate all these candidates. I mean, it really is a curveball. We're literally answering texts of where they are. And some of them went to another event and came here. The ones you've already seen left here and went to another event. I appreciate that because some of them decided not to come here at all. And that's up for you to decide, but I really appreciate some of them bending over backwards. And the next one that's here, I get to introduce. He's actually my solicitor in our district in Newberry, South Carolina, and Greenwood, South Carolina. Y'all welcome up from Greenwood, South Carolina, David Stumbo. Well, David, you got a minute or 2 minutes to open up, brother.
All right, thank you, Chad and Randy. Appreciate y'all having me tonight. My favorite stops on the campaign trail are when I get to come into the house of the Lord and get prayed over by Faith Wins pastors, and that's been a wonderful part of this statewide campaign. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm David Stumbo. I have been the 8th Circuit Solicitor in Newberry County, which is Chad lives up there, Newberry, Greenwood, Abbeville, in Lawrence counties, those 4 counties, for the past 14 years. I was elected in 2012. I've been a prosecutor for over 2 decades. I worked twice in the Attorney General's office prior to the time of being elected solicitor. I'm married to my wife, Vanessa, who's walking in now, of 26 and a half years. We have 4 children and a daughter-in-law. Our 4 kids are almost 25. Our son, Gabe, he and his wife Hannah live up in the Greenville area. He works for BMW, and we have 3 daughters, Hallie, Ruth, Maggie, Brooke, and Andy. But I have been a prosecutor my whole career, and the things I want you to remember tonight about me is I'm a career crime-fighting prosecutor. I've made a career out of working with law enforcement and fighting crime and keeping your family safe. That's why I went to law school in the first place, to do that. And I've also been a lifetime conservative Republican. And that matters in an attorney general's race because your AG is your chief prosecutor per our state constitution, and your AG is also the chief lawyer for the state that has to defend legislation that is passed by our General Assembly to advance good public policy, conservative Republican public policy, and to fight back on the federal government when they're overreaching into South Carolina. And so as a lifelong conservative and a crime fighter, I'm ready to be your next AG. Would love for y'all's support and vote on June the 9th.
I know you've been running all over the place, and it's just appreciate you being here. Tell us about your faith journey and how it impacts your policy decisions.
Yes, sir. I grew up in a Christian home and was saved at the age of 7. I remember distinctly where I was. We were at a place called Creeds Creek, which is not too far from here. Before we moved to Greenwood, when I was 10 years old, lived in Columbia. And I have a lot of friends in the audience. I see Mr. Bucky Drake here, who knew me when I was little. And I was saved at an RA event, Royal Ambassador event. I grew up Southern Baptist. And I remember hearing the gospel message for the first time that we're all sinners and we fall short of the glory of God. And we need a Savior. And we need a Savior called Jesus, who went to the cross and took the penalty of our sin upon himself. And that's the only way that we can be right with God and be saved. And so I remember that resonating with me at age 7 at an RA meeting over there at Creeds Creek here in Columbia, and I gave my life to the Lord then. I grew up in a Christian home. We had a biblical, so I get my biblical worldview and conservative politics honest. My parents, Cliff and Debbie Stumbo, raised me with those values. They had me going to pro-life rallies and Republican Party meetings when I was young. And so I learned all about how to live as a good citizen in our country, and really had a sense of duty to give back to the public. And that's what birthed in me the desire to be a prosecutor as well. I believe it was a calling from the Lord. And so as a believer in Christ, Vanessa and I, we have raised our children in the fear and admonition of the Lord. Have we done it perfectly? Far from it. We are just imperfect sinners in the hands of a gracious and loving God. And that's the way we see our lives, and have had so many opportunities. God's opened doors. When you talk about our faith journey, it has so much to do not only with our family, but my vocation. I was the first lawyer in my family. And so I certainly had God opening doors for me. I didn't have, I didn't have a daddy who was a senator, or an uncle who was a judge, or, a lot of my law school classmates when I went to law school had those advantages. But God opened doors for me to allow me to get into this profession to be a prosecutor. And so my faith journey has been woven throughout this, through the good, bad, and the ugly, through the mistakes we've made as parents. God's been gracious, and every time we make mistakes, he just, like the father of the prodigal son, just kind of brings us back into the fold. And so we're proud to be a son and daughter of the King, and raised our children in the same fashion.
The issue of religious liberty affects individuals, businesses, houses of worship, and faith-based organizations throughout South Carolina. As Attorney General, what actions would you take to protect religious liberty?
Well, we would 100% bring actions on behalf of the people of our state if we see laws that are being passed that restrict religious liberty. We have some pretty recent history with this, right, y'all? We look back in 2020 when this pandemic hit. We had government entities trying to close churches and prevent our ability to gather and worship together. And yet liquor stores, strip clubs were somehow open, and that was okay. That's unacceptable. And so if we ever have that situation again, as your AG, I'm going to use the power of the office through the opinions division and through civil litigation, if we have to push back on any local government entity. State, if the legislature does it, we're going to push back on it. If the federal government comes in and tries to restrict our ability to worship freely, as your Attorney General, we're going to fight back on that. Just one quick story. I worked for the opinions division in the AG's office when I was in law school. And one of the cases I was able to work on with Bob Cook, who's still the head of the opinions section there today. Y'all know him well. I learned a lot from Bob. But we were involved with the case in Great Falls, just right up the road from here. This was the early 2000s when I was in law school, and there was a Wiccan priestess who had sued the town of Great Falls because they were opening their town council meetings praying in Jesus' name. And I was able to work on that case and help write that brief with Bob. And it was a federal lawsuit. And so I'm really excited about that possibility. Look, I've been fighting crime the last however many years I've been doing this prosecution gig, 22. But I'm really looking forward to the part of the AG's office. It's not only the criminal prosecution division, but the division that helps shape public policy and fight for our religious liberties.
This doesn't kind of get my question. You still remember the Ambassador for Christ song, Royal Ambassador song?
Yes.
Of course you do. Okay,
We're
all right.
royal
I'm making sure.
ambassadors. You want me to sing it?
Ambassadors. A lot of discussion about, I had to ask.
Yes,
I
I
had to
remember
memorize it.
that.
A lot of discussion about judges. And you said on the survey with Palmetto Family, you really weren't in favor of popular opinion or popular vote for judges. Is there a better way as Attorney General? How do you help lead that fight? What's the best path for South Carolina in electing judges in our state?
Great question, Chad, and I am fully in favor of us utilizing the model that we do on the national level, on the federal level. There's not a lot of good things that come out of Washington, D.C., but the way we have always appointed judges on the federal level is how we need to be doing it here. And the reason for that is there's accountability. There's a balance to the branches of government. The separation of powers is a very important principle in for our founding fathers that they put into our Constitution. Right now, the way we elect judges in South Carolina completely leaves out the executive branch. You have the legislative branch that hires, fires, and funds the judicial branch. That's a problem, especially when you have lawyers in the legislature that practice in front of those same judges that they hire, fire, and fund. That is not a good model for electing judges. So what do y'all think of when we elect a president? What's one of the main issues we look at when we're trying to look for a president of the United States? It's what kind of U.S. Supreme Court justices is this president going to appoint? And all the way down the federal bench. We need that in South Carolina. We need one of the big issues in our governor's race to be what kind of judges is this governor going to appoint to our bench in South Carolina? And then the legislature has the confirmation process. If it's a bad nomination by any given governor, the legislature can have confirmation hearings and turn down and not confirm, and then say, Governor, we need another nominee. And that system perfectly balances our branches of government. And it's why it's worked. It's been tried and true on the federal level for decades, centuries. And so that's what we need to implement in South Carolina. To do that, we would need a constitutional amendment. The Judicial Merit Screening Commission was put in the 1990s. Intentions were good to try to screen the judicial candidates. We need to scrap it because it is not working like it is supposed to work right now. And I think we need to go to a federal model. The only difference, I wouldn't have lifetime appointments on the state level. I think we need basically a reconfirmation hearing in the Senate Judiciary and House Judiciary every 6 years. That would be my only difference from the federal model. That's my plan for judicial reform.
As you know, the expansion of gambling has been an issue that the General Assembly has been debating a good bit this year. As Attorney General, what type of actions would you take to oppose expanding gambling across South Carolina?
Well, first of all, the last thing we need is some bricks and mortar casino in Santee. And I'm thankful we shut that down this year in the legislature. Thankful for the work of Palmetto Family Council and Faith Wins and a lot of our churches around the state. We fought that because let me tell y'all, there was a lot of money paid to lobbyists to come in and work the General Assembly to approve that casino. And the believers, that are probably a lot of them in this room, stood up and said, no, we don't need that. As a criminal prosecutor, I'll tell you what that brings. It brings organized crime. Let's be honest. Any place in the country where you have these casinos, you have organized crime partnering with the casinos. You have drugs. You have prostitution. You have human trafficking. Y'all want to talk about a problem we could be enhancing in our state? The last thing we need is to enhance the ability for human traffickers to abuse young girls the way they're already doing. And that's a whole other thing I'd like to address later. We need to really get after this human trafficking thing. We're barely scratching the surface. But getting back to gambling, we need to make sure we're implementing and passing laws in the General Assembly. And as your Attorney General, I've used the bully pulpit of that office to advocate for legislation to make sure we're not bringing the vice of gambling into our state. It's just bad for society. It's addictive. I'd say gambling, there's people that are addicted to gambling, probably more addictive than narcotics in a lot of situations, and just as destructive to these families. And so I'd be against that.
Throughout his tenure as Attorney General, General Wilson has led and pushed efforts across the country with the Republican Attorney General Association fighting protecting life, defending religious liberty, conscience protections. How would you treat that? How aggressive would you be in actions you take as Attorney General for South Carolina?
100% I'll be working with the Republican AGs. There is strength in numbers, and you talk about a lot of the other AGs' offices, like Texas has a huge force of attorneys there. Florida has a very large Attorney General's office. I would like to see in South Carolina us enhance the public policy and civil divisions of the office. Obviously, my bread and butter is fighting crime in the criminal division, but we need to handle more cases in-house at the AG's office. And so one of the plans I would have is to develop a really strong group of young attorneys and do this by recruiting some of the best and brightest out of the law schools, particularly ones that are believers, young Christian lawyers that have a similar worldview. Bring them in to work some of these public policy and civil cases. We outsource a lot of those right now, and it costs the state probably a lot more money in legal fees than we need. So I would like to see that's one area that I think we can have a little more control in-house in the way we handle cases that matter to believers and Christian conservatives.
South Carolina consistently ranks among the worst states in the nation on the issue of parental rights. As you know, this year the House overwhelmingly passed the Parental Rights Act. However, it failed to even get a hearing in the Senate Education Committee. As both a parent and possibly as our next Attorney General, how important is this issue to you, and what steps would you take to promote parental rights?
This is an issue very near and dear to our heart. Vanessa and I have raised our 4 children in a way that may be sometimes unconventional. We like to make choices for our kids' education. And y'all, we don't need government bureaucrats telling us how to educate our kids. We need to be able to make those choices and have the freedom to make those choices as parents. We need to be able to have the freedom to make choices for our kids on other issues of medical treatment like vaccines and other things. We don't need government bureaucrats dictating those things to parents. We need to make sure parents have rights in the schools if the schools are trying to push some woke, radical agenda on our kids, parents need to have the ability and the tools legally to push back on that. And so as your Attorney General, I'm going to be advocating for all of those things. The parental rights bill needed to pass this year. It did not. I'm disappointed that the Senate did not take it up. In fact, I had a meeting with Tanya Shellnut. We went and saw Senator Hembry, and Senator Hembry made a vow that it would be the first bill up in his committee in January because they weren't able to get to it this year. And so I'm going to hold Senator Hembry to that. He's a longtime friend of mine and former solicitor down in the Myrtle Beach area, now a senator. But that bill needs to pass, and it's going to be a massive priority for me as your next AG to make sure that parental rights bill gets across the finish line. And then in that bill, the Attorney General has the ability to enforce the law. And so I'm going to be on the front lines of that as your next AG.
David, take a minute and wrap up and do your final pitch to everybody.
You bet. As I said earlier, I'm the one candidate in this race, y'all, that has been a crime-fighting prosecutor for my whole career and also a conservative Republican and on issues that matter to us like life. I didn't talk much about life tonight, but Vanessa and I have worked in crisis pregnancy centers and given our time and resources to the life issue to fight for the unborn and fight for these girls that are coming in crisis pregnancies. And a lot of people in the room see Alexa up here, and there's many others that are so instrumental in the pro-life movement. That issue matters to us. So when it comes to life, when it comes to election integrity, when it comes to parental rights, like we've talked about, when it comes to your Second Amendment rights to bear arms, because we know the only thing that stops a bad guy with the gun is a good guy with the gun. Those issues matter. You need to have a conservative Republican that's been on the right side of those issues for his entire life. And also is ready to lead I've had 18 sheriffs around South Carolina endorse me in this race, and I think that speaks to my experience in the trenches as a crime-fighting prosecutor. And so we're ready to take that battle, what we've been doing in the 8th Circuit, to the state level, and we're excited to be your next Attorney General. Would love to have your vote and support on June the 9th.
Y'all give David a hand.
Well, our next speaker tonight is the First Circuit Solicitor David Pascoe. So please join me in welcoming Solicitor Pascoe to the stage.
Good evening, everybody.
It's great to have you.
Great to be here.
So if you could just start us with a 2-minute opening statement.
You got it.
Yes, sir.
I'm David Pascoe, and I'm running for Attorney General to make South Carolina safer and a lot less corrupt. I've been a prosecutor for 33 years. And during that time, I'm the only candidate who's put evil men on death row. I sent a cop killer to the firing squad just last spring. I'm the only candidate running for office that has prosecuted corruption at every level of government, from the cities all the way to the state house. I was the first public official in South Carolina to call for judicial reform. In fact, in the words of my good friend Joe White, David Pascoe is the reason judicial reform was on the 2024 presidential Republican ballot. I'm proud of the fights that I fought as a prosecutor for this state, and I'm going to fight as your Attorney General with a plan to lower crime. Go read my plan. With a plan to fight illegal immigration and keep them in jail longer so ICE can determine whether they need to be deported or not. And then I'm going to fight like Gideon's army on my two biggest topics. Protecting our children better, because we have done a dismal job in South Carolina of protecting our children, and prosecuting public corruption. It's time to flip the tables in South Carolina. I am going to improve our single-digit rate on child pornography cases. And we are going to start seeking the death penalty on child rapists. And I'm going to establish a statewide youth church diversion program to get our children away from a path of crime. And on corruption, the reason they're coming after me, the days of lawyer legislators making millions of dollars in government contracts are over, because I'm going to fire them on day one. We are going to investigate illegal lobbying for the first time in South Carolina since I was your special prosecutor. And I'm going to end with this, because I got to believe my 2 minutes are almost up.
They are.
Oh, the days of toleration are going to come to an end in South Carolina, and I'll explain that in my 1-minute closing. Thank y'all. Thank you. Thank you for letting me go over.
Great. Thank you, David. If you could you describe your faith journey and how it impacts your public policy positions?
I've been a follower of Jesus since, as young as I can remember. I was brought up a Catholic, parochial school from first grade on up through all of high school. And then I became a Baptist. So I started eating meat on Fridays. I was asked this great question. I got to bring it up. When I went to speak to a number of pastors, thanks to you, Chad, and they asked me, when were you born again? I got to be honest with you. I'd never thought about that before. But I think if I had to pick a moment, it was the day my first son was born in 1996. Because if there was any time in my life where I got even closer to Jesus, it was the day that my first son was born, Michael. So everything I do is based, I have 3 books next to my bed, and one of which, of course, is the Bible. So,
thank you.
Very good. I've tried to say this to everybody, David. Thank you for coming. You know, all 3 Attorney General candidates came to this event. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank
you. It means a lot to me. I know you ran up there and came back down here, and I just want to ask about religious liberty. We just watched the whole COVID thing. It seems like churches and faith-based groups were attacked when all these other groups were fine to be open. As Attorney General, how would you handle that? How would you lead the charge protecting religious liberty, freedom of conscience, and those issues?
Great question. I was endorsed by Stand for Medical Health Freedom for a reason. Because remember, a lot of those mandates weren't just federal mandates, Chad. Some of them for a while were state mandates. When I'm your Attorney General, and this is why the Attorney General position is the most important position on the ballot. When I'm your Attorney General, if we ever have another issue like COVID, where they're shutting down churches, shutting down schools, shutting down ball games that were outside, I will sue on behalf of the citizens of the state and make sure that does not happen. I'm not going to put up with any more stuff like that, particularly when it comes to faith and our youth. What we did in South Carolina was shameful with regards to shutting churches and shutting, again, youth events that were outside of all things. So that's the importance of the Attorney General. I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen again.
David, as you know, the legalization of gambling is a subject that the General Assembly has been extensively debating this particular session. As Attorney General, what type of actions would you take to oppose the expansion of gambling in the Palmetto State?
All right, let's be honest for a minute. Am I allowed to break Reagan's 11th commandment and talk bad about my opponents if I want to? Well, a lot of the money that's being used to attack me comes from the casinos because they are supporting one of my opponents, if not both, but certainly one. Let's be really, really honest. If David Pasco is the Attorney General, the chances of a casino coming into Orangeburg are about as close to zero as you can get. Not only am I philosophically opposed to it, but that's not the main reason. I'm philosophically opposed to everything. What I am, a lot of things that are still going to be legal, and I am pro-law. I'm always going to enforce the laws. The reason it's not going to come is because there is no way in heck that they're going to get that bill passed lawfully. There's no way they're going to do it without a lot of money going under the table. I am the only candidate for Attorney General that's running on an anti-corruption platform. And when I'm your Attorney General, I'm going to make sure they do everything right. And that means making sure nobody's being paid or that there's no illegal lobbying going on. Do y'all really think that they can pass a casino in South Carolina the right way? Not a chance. And when I'm the Attorney General, I'm going to make sure they always have to do it the right way. And there's no chance we'll get a casino when I'm the Attorney General. None.
You and I first met at a judicial reform meeting, and I really like how you put it in the survey. You'd like to elect judges anyway, other than the way we do it now. You mentioned the Missouri plan. Would you elaborate on that? What's the best path forward for South Carolina in electing judges?
And it was 2021 when I decided to go on my crusade on judicial reform. And the first place I went were to Republican Party events to talk about how we needed to change the way we picked our judges. And Chad, you are so right. Any way is better at picking judges than what we have. If I could wave a wand, this is what we would do. We would remove all legislators from the Judicial Merit Selection Committee, because that's where the shenanigans take place. So let's get all the legislators out of the JMSC, and we'll let the governor have all 12 appointments or how many members they want to have on the JMSC, or let the governor have half and the Chief Justice have half. But bottom line, no legislators. Then I'm okay with having the legislators vote for the judge. And this is why. It's in the Constitution, and it's going to be almost impossible for us to pass a constitutional amendment changing the way we pick our judges. So we'll let the legislators elect the judges one time. But this is where the Missouri plan that Chad mentioned comes into play. So I'm not making this up. Other states already do this. When that judge is elected to the bench, he or she serves her 6-year term on the bench. They then, when their term expires, they then go before us, the people. It's not a judicial race where there's an opponent against them. They're on the ballot unopposed, and we give them an up or a down. If we give them an up, they get to stay on the bench. If we give them a down, then we go through another process and someone else will run for judge. I like that plan because how many systems are there out there where the governor gets a voice in that judge with the JMSC, the legislature still gets their constitutionally mandated voice in picking the judge originally, and then ultimately we, the people, get a voice in that judge. So that's how I would pick judges if I could wave a wand and get it done.
David, as you're aware, South Carolina consistently ranks among the worst states in the nation for parental rights, and there's been a lot back and forth in the legislature this year. But as a parent and possibly as our next Attorney General, how important is this issue to you, and what steps would you take to promote parental rights?
Very important. Government doesn't know what's best for my children. Government doesn't know what's best for your children out there. So I'm always going to fight for the citizens over not only government, but over bureaucracies and over school boards or anything else to ensure that the parents have the first say-so in their children's welfare. I mean, it's a very simple question and a very simple answer. It's a top priority.
David, throughout his tenure as Attorney General, General Wilson actively led efforts across the nation to protect life, defend religious liberty, freedom of conscience protections. What types of actions will you take if you're elected as our next Attorney General to lead the way in that?
And I will applaud him in how he has been the first line of defense against the federal government and even other states that have tried to encroach on our rights on those issues. And as your Attorney General, I'm going to do exactly what he has done, and I'm going to be the first line of defense to make sure progressive or liberal states or maybe a federal government don't encroach on our rights. But let me tell you one of my goals. We're always the 17th or the 23rd state that files the lawsuits against the federal administration. I'd like to be the first state to file those lawsuits. I'd like for the states of Florida and Missouri and others to say, and Texas to say, let's do what South Carolina is doing, instead of us always saying, let's do what the other states are doing.
Well, you have been one of the most succinct persons in giving answers tonight.
Good.
By far.
Keep it simple, stupid. That's what I was always.
So you actually have 3 minutes and 51 seconds to give a closing statement.
Yeah, baby. I wasn't going to give y'all a closing. Look, I got a great, someone sent me Proverbs, I think it was 21:15, that when justice is done, the righteous are happy, but terror to the evildoers. Y'all have seen the ads against me. They're paid for by the trial lawyers. That's the Integrity Watch. Ads by the fact-check people. That's the House caucus. And the reason they're coming after me is I've said on day one that I'm firing lawyer legislators from all government contracts. I'm going to take away their nut. And they don't like me. The reason the trial lawyers are coming after me is we had a state senator stand up on the Senate floor and say, did you know that I was offered $100,000 to vote against tort reform? Is there anybody here that doesn't think that's a bribe? But in the South Carolina Senate, they adjourned, came back and acted like nothing has happened. Well, on my first day in the office, I'm going to send SLED agents down to the Senate, and I'm going to find out what they meant by that. So the trial lawyers, with their Integrity Watch, they're now coming after me. When we strike a blow against justice, or better yet, let me get the quote right, when we tolerate what we know to be wrong in our society, when we tolerate what we know to be wrong, we strike a blow against justice. And that's why when I'm your Attorney General, I promise you that the days of toleration are going to come to an end. I got a very disturbing text 5 minutes before getting here, since I've got more time. I told you that I'm going to improve the conviction rate on child pornography. My former deputy solicitor literally just texted me that someone who got probation in Orangeburg on one count a couple of years ago just got rearrested for reoffending. He shouldn't have been out on our streets. This is what I'm going to do. We get millions of dollars to prosecute child pornography cases, but we're prosecuting them out of Columbia. Some kid out of law school doesn't care about those cases in Oconee, in Dorchester, in Orangeburg, in Charleston. I'm going to take that money and I'm going to spend it in the local solicitor's offices, and that's where we're going to prosecute those cases. And we will see a much higher conviction rate, or David Pasco will go campaign against that solicitor with your help, and we'll get him out of office. Child rapists. People say we need a statute to seek the death penalty on them. No, we've already got the law. We are going to start seeking the death penalty on child rapists in South Carolina when I'm your Attorney General. So I'd ask you this, June the 9th, judge me by my enemies. Judge me by my enemies. I believe that I have the most conservative record of anybody running for any office, governor, attorney general, anything. Just look at my record. Judge me by my fruits. They say that I am a wolf in sheep's clothing. I am a wolf in wolf's clothing. You know exactly what you're going to get from me. So if you're tired of corruption, if you're tired of our children not being protected well, if you're tired of illegal immigrants out on our streets, I'd ask that you vote for me on June the 9th. And I really appreciate y'all having me here tonight. Thank you.
Y'all give David a hand. Y'all appreciate David for coming. Appreciate you, brother. You know, Randy and I might have mentioned curveballs. Last night I got a text of Senator Graham's flight schedule. He was going to land in Charlotte at 7 p.m. and he got called back into the Senate. So they just sent us a video as well. One more video for you and we'll wrap up.
Hey to the East Step clan. As you can tell, I'm in Washington, not in South Carolina. Eric, I'm sorry I can't be there. This is an important time. We're dealing with trying to get border security money. I'm going to meet President Trump today about helping our friends in Israel. Iran is a bunch of religious Nazis. They would destroy our way of life if we would let them. President Trump's been a great president. Pray for our friends in Israel. That's one of the tenets of what we're trying to do. To every person in South Carolina of faith, make sure you participate in our democracy. Get out and vote. Make sure your voice counts for the unborn, for our friends in Israel. The secular world is very committed to their agenda. We need to be committed to ours. I'm sorry I can't be there. Hopefully we do reconciliation today. Money for ICE, money for border. Going to meet with President Trump to make sure that we keep Iran in a box and we can keep our friends in Israel safe. Those who want to destroy Israel want to destroy you. God bless to the East Step family, to all involved. See you soon, I hope.
So I'm going to keep emphasizing 9 candidates accepted our invitation. Out of the 17 we invited, I hope that you'll check out all the candidates and get to know them. We got trumped. And so Senator Graham didn't make it. Randy, you got any final words before I close this? Where's Pastor Eric? I'm going to have him. Would you come up and close in prayer? Listen, deep bow of appreciation on behalf of Pamela family and Faith Wins. Your vote matters. You realize people like you and me make up almost 70% of the vote in South Carolina. It's not good enough anymore in this world we're in to sit back and say, well, I voted. You got to do more than that. Y'all, we're the 5-alarm fire in our nation. There are people who are very committed to taking this country down. Y'all watch it. They're very committed to taking down your faith and your religious liberty and your freedoms. You've watched people, I mean, goodness gracious, we got people screaming at President Trump because he cleaned up water fountains. What? 40 water fountains work now. I just don't get that level of anger and vitriol, but it's happening in our country. I don't think it's about a party at all. I think it's a spiritual war we are in, and you as Christians need to step up. I believe now's our time. We're going to find out if we're in a moment or a movement. God's given us an opportunity. He's tapping you on the shoulder, and I'm just so honored y'all took your time out on a Thursday night to come and be with us. And on behalf of Faith Wins and Pamela family, thank you very much. Pastor Eric, y'all give him one more hand for hosting. Love you, brother.
All right, let me lead us in a word of prayer. We'll close out in a word of prayer, then y'all go eat. So let's pray. Jesus, we are grateful for the opportunity just simply to come together as believers, and Lord, for our voices to be heard. And I pray, Heavenly Father, that you'll give us wisdom. I pray, Jesus, that you will bless us with wonderful leaders who will lead us in the right way. And I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless y'all. Good night.
Good night, y'all.